family have saved about £600. I would definitely use it again, and I would definitely recommend it.
With a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit wedooh.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
Driving too close to the car in front gives you less time to react. You may not realise that you're tailgating. Leave a 2-second gap between you and the vehicle in front. When it's wet, leave a 4-second gap. By staying back, you give yourself time to react. Stay safe. Stay back. Highways England, connecting the country.
Coming up on Love Sport Radio, it is the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. You're with me, Johnny Burrow, Guy Watts, joined by special guest Steve Thompson, England 2003 Rugby World Cup winner, with some incredible news breaking from the world of athletics. We should have been talking about the brilliance of Adam Jamili, the brilliance of Dina Asher-Smith. Instead, we're discussing the news that Sir Mo Farah's former coach Alberto Salazar has been banned for 4 years for doping violations. The question now, does this have any bearing on Farah? He's never failed a drugs test. There are no allegations against him, but it's not a good look. Don't go anywhere.
On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is Love Sport News.
From the Sky News Centre at 3. Boris Johnson has denied a leaked plan to break the Brexit deadlock is the actual version he will propose soon to the EU. It had been claimed the government wanted to install new customs checkpoints a few miles either side of the Irish border. But the Prime Minister says that's not the case. The Irish PM, Leo Varadkar, has responded to those reports.
I do very much welcome Prime Minister Johnson's words today when he disowned and distanced himself from those non-papers. Had he not, in my view, it would have been hard evidence of bad faith on behalf of the British government.
One of Britain's most wanted fugitives has been convicted of murder after stabbing a man in a bar in Hillingdon in West London. The Old Bailey heard that after the attack in 2015, Shane O'Brien went on the run for 3 years before being arrested in Romania. Police on the Isle of Man have declared a major incident after heavy downpours triggered severe flooding. Elsewhere, there are around 42 flood warnings in place across Britain. In Hong Kong, police have fired tear gas and water cannon at protesters, and one campaigner's been shot. Pro-democracy activists have called rallies on the same day China marks 70 years of communist rule. There are concerns about research which suggests cutting back on red meat doesn't necessarily have any health benefits. Scientists now think there's not enough strong evidence to link any reduced risk of heart disease, diabetes or cancer. Dr. Gyota Mitro from the World Cancer Research Fund doesn't support how this data is being interpreted.
What we disagree is the impact they have given on the evidence and the recommendations that resulted in a number of big headlines that say, steak is back on the menu.
And the Football Association's investigating an allegation of racism discrimination during Saturday's championship game between Charlton Athletic and Leeds United. It involved Leeds goalkeeper Kiko Casilla and Charlton forward Jonathan Lako. That's the latest. I'm Tanya Snuggs.
Love Sport Radio. On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive.
Good afternoon, it's the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. You're with me, Johnny Burrow and Guy Watts, joined by special guest Steve Thompson, Rugby World Cup winner in 2003 with the mighty England, and with the earth-shattering news, frankly, that Sir Mo Farah's former coach Alberto Salazar has been banned for athletics for 4 years for doping violations. Now, Salazar ran the Nike Oregon project, where Farah trained from 2011 to 2017, and an independent panel found Salazar and the doctor there, Brown, possessed and trafficked a banned performance-enhancing substance and administered or attempted to administer a prohibited method to multiple track and field athletes. Now, we know these charges centred largely around testosterone, but he was a figure who was clearly unorthodox, shall we say, Steve. This was a guy who was known for asking his athletes to operate in chambers designed to simulate high altitude. He was someone who passed out after a marathon himself in 1982 because he refused to drink any water. Was this, at first at least, just an exercise in pushing the limits?
Yeah, it totally is. You know, people have got to be guinea pigs as such, and obviously he put himself as a guinea pig at first, and then suddenly thought, I'll tell you what, let's get hold of some other athletes. And you look at it and you just think, you know, you have to test the limits physically. You know, everyone always wants to get better. That 1% of, you know, between winning a gold medal and then coming fourth in some of it. So, you know, he is someone that's thinking outside the box, but then suddenly how much of it is legal, and obviously he's been found out that some of it isn't.
Well, the big question now is what this means, if anything, for Sir Mo Farah, because Salazar has been found guilty of charges relating to doping. There are no charges, no allegations even levelled against Farah. He's never failed a drugs test. He's always maintained that he's totally committed to being a clean athlete and is committed to clean sport more broadly. But you've got to look at the timescale he was with Salazar and what happened to his career in that time. He linked up with him at the Nike Oregon project in 2011, and within 7 months of that move, Farah had taken almost 45 seconds off his personal best for the 10,000 metres, and he upgraded 7th place at the 2009 World Championships into 5,000 metre gold at the World Championships in 2011. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean there was anything at all untoward going on with this specific athlete. And it should be noted that despite all of Salazar's wrongdoing, he was clearly an exceptional coach. But do you think in terms of Farah's legacy, we're going to have people now looking at what were incredible achievements going, OK, but your coach, at least, was cheating?
You look at, you know, it's like I said before, it's about the 1%ers, and as an athlete, as a top athlete, you know, perhaps, you know, he is totally legal. He's been tested, you know, and I've been on that. Believe it or not, in rugby they brought in the testing schedule, which they do for all athletes because it became an Olympic sport, the 24/7, where you have to let them know exactly where you are between 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock. And it's a nightmare. Say you're out with a friend drinking and suddenly you go, oh, actually, I want to stay at your house. You have to email them straight away his address.
I've had a beer.
Yeah, and just say where you're going to be, because if they turn up at your house and you're not there, that's a strike. You know, and if you're at training with the club and all of a sudden they go, actually, we're going to go and train at this school for publicity things, suddenly you don't think, you just jump in the car, go there to train, they turn up at the club and you haven't told them because it's your responsibility, that's a strike, you know. And you know, with Mo Farah, he would have been tested massively. You know, with Lance Armstrong, with everything going on through that as well, you know, they know how they're testing. So, you know, Mo, fantastically well. You know, he is a knight now. So you think to yourself, you like to think that he is clean, and perhaps the coach has just tried out on other people and tried the boundaries, and Mo stayed within those boundaries. But, you know, he did really push those limits because, you know, he is a massive icon for British athletics.
It would be absolutely terrible if he was found to have done anything wrong. Important to stress that there are no allegations and certainly absolutely no proof whatsoever that he did. But back in 2015, BBC Panorama first made allegations against Salazar. Now, Mo Farah was aware of that, as we all were, because this was a publicly broadcast television show, and he kept working with Salazar until 2017, saying completely happy with the situation. In 2015, Farah was asked whether he was reconsidering working with the controversial coach.
He said to me, Mo, I can assure you this, trust me. These are just allegations, I can prove all this, just wait till it comes out, and it will come out. And I was like, are you sure? And he said, yes. And that's when sort of I just left it, and for me, I just wanted to continue running.
So Mo Farah there, who has today released a statement responding to the USADA's findings. He said, "I'm relieved that the USADA has, after 4 years, completed their investigation into Alberto Salazar. I left the Nike Oregon project in 2017, but as I've always said, I have no tolerance for anyone who breaks the rules or crosses a line. A ruling has been made, and I'm glad there has finally been a conclusion." He's saying all the right things. He's making all the right noises, but it should be noted that he broke from Salazar, whose own background as an athlete and as a coach was in marathon running, in 2017, after Farah had very, very publicly made this switch to running on roads, to focusing on the marathon away from track events. Now, again, he maintains it was purely for family reasons. He wanted his kids to grow up in the UK. But at the very least, you'd have to say, by staying with Salazar, he was a bit naive.
It was naive, but when you're winning and it's a winning formula, when he's in there, you got to think, does he know what's really going on? Has he stayed within the boundaries? He has, because he's been tested and he hasn't been found positive. You want to be with the best coaches, and sometimes the best coaches do think outside the box. And it worked for him. Like you said, he's gone from 9th in 2009, I think it was, to first, to winning golds. Every time he went out, he just won races. And that's because, he's got to put his hand up and say it was the coach. And it's come out now, obviously, the coach has not been completely within those boundaries. He split from him in 2017. Did he jump just in time? You don't know. But, you got to look at Mo as an athlete, not as the coach that's coached him as well. And he's been tested massively. Like I said before, with Lance Armstrong, the biggest athlete in the world, to be found guilty. Suddenly you got to look at him. He hasn't been found guilty here, so we are pushing towards what's going on, what's happened, he's been our best athlete really, or one of the best athletes we've had. And I think it's quite a British thing sometimes to actually go after people and say, right, let's try and knock them down.
Rather than celebrating the brilliance of someone like Sir Mo Farah, who was so impressive at London 2012, has been since 2011, and is one of the great sporting names of this country.
Yeah, and, it's like with Wiggins as well. As soon as Wiggins won the Tour de France, there's a witch hunt after him. Oh, he's got to be guilty. He's got to be... And it's as if they went after him just to find something. And I think we do that quite well in Britain. We build people up, and then suddenly, as soon as we have a stick to try and whack them, that's what we try and do.
Well, in terms of what the Nike Oregon project was actually found guilty of, we know they broke the rules on infusions. We know they handed out prescriptions to athletes when there was no legitimate medical need for them. But above all else, we know they broke rules relating to the supply and usage for athletes of testosterone. Now, in your career, was testosterone ever something you had administered? What are the effects like?
No, not during my playing career, there hasn't. Afterwards, I've used it. Middle-age spread. It's a good way to get rid of middle-age spread, and that, I must admit, and keep you away from other things that you need to take to keep performing in other places. But it's we were in the boundaries as such. I can remember though looking at some athletes that were on the asthma drugs. They did have asthma. Been to the doctors, they've been prescribed it properly, and they were some of the fittest people in the team. I was just thinking, why can't I have asthma? Don't get me wrong, I don't want to be ill and have asthma. But you see them, suddenly they were like top of the charts on the long distance running and the fitness tests and that. You think, hang on a minute. So, but we were well in there. We were taking colostrum. We were having caffeine drinks right up to the limit, being told whatever you do, you cannot have any more caffeine outside of this because you could fail. So whatever sport you're in at the top levels, people are always trying to push those limits. The England rugby squad, I think we were probably one of the first in the world of rugby to do that. We had the full-time nutritionists on there, and in 2000 I think 99 up to 2003, we were sort of trying to lead the way as such, and really trying to push those boundaries, legally, but just what they can do. We were being put to bed in the afternoon, 2003 World Cup pre-camp, giving like cups of colostrum, which is the first milk out of a cow or a woman. So they see that as the highest form of protein, and they were giving us that sort of medication, not medication as such, but nutrition to try and get us above the rest, and that's what they're doing. Athletics is even higher than that, to be honest. When you look at it, you look at tenths of seconds in some of them athletes that can make the difference.
Well, this is the thing. These are sports of fine margins, and it should be noted that while Salazar has been found guilty of various offences, as I say, particularly relating to testosterone, a lot of the stuff he was doing was legal. is about pushing those limits and is getting as close to them as you can to get his athletes as much of a legal advantage as possible. And that doesn't sound particularly nice, it doesn't sound particularly moral, but it was quite literally his job up until the point where he crossed that line. We know that runners were given thyroid and asthma drugs and other substances as well, which were technically legal in most cases, but weren't necessarily required to address a medical need. Now, important to stress again that we don't know whether that was the case with Sir Mo Farah. It very possibly wasn't. But another thing we now know that Salazar did was testing just how much testosterone he could give someone without getting a positive test back. This is something in a rather dystopian way he was trying out on his own sons, going, well, let's see how far we can go and I'll test you and we'll see where you get over the limit. For you, as someone who's competed at the very highest level of an elite sport, how valid is it to be not necessarily breaking the rules, but bending them and seeing how far they can stretch before they break?
I mean, you've got to keep yourself ahead. That's what you've got to do, you know. And you know what's in, and at one stage, you know, you as an athlete, you're there, and you've got people around you, your coaches, your nutritionists. And I must admit, I totally trusted them. They were there for a reason. They tell you to take something, and you take it. You know, if you want to just keep pushing yourself. I was one of the players that, you know, I'm here. You trust them completely. They know what the drug rules are. You know, I always see it as when you go and have your car serviced. I don't go in there and question everything I do about my car. I know it's my body, but I just went out there. I concentrated on playing, and they were there to help me get my body in a better shape, and mentally and physically ahead of my opposition. And that's what their job was to do. And personally, I went with it.
Well, I think that's a really fascinating point, because for me, one of the most troubling pieces of testimony in this Salazar report is one former athlete who worked with him at this Oregon centre, who was given a course of prohibited substances, but had been told, he says, that this had been approved by all of the governing bodies. So he went, yeah, fair enough, doc, because you trust the doctor, which is quite shocking that people potentially were duped into doping. But from your point of view, as someone who has seen how close to the line these things can go firsthand, and you also hear the rumours and the judgments about the likes of Salazar, when you're watching athletics, do you trust it? Do you trust that all of the quick runners you see, for example, are clean?
No, you obviously got to be careful what you say here, but you just look at some of the gains some of these have, and you just think it's just not physically possible to do that naturally. You know, sometimes you get an athlete that's young, and all of a sudden they have a big growth spurt, or they come from, you know, teenage life into manhood as such. You can see how that's possible. You know, you get late developers and things like that. But some of these athletes you see, they're just average, and all of a sudden they disappear off the scene. Then they come back with a bang, and you can just see in the muscle mass, even like the bone structures and that change of some of it. That you think to yourself, you know, that can't be natural. But it's one of them. Sometimes you just got to take your hat off and just look and think, I enjoy watching this. I want to see how fast the body can run. I want to see how hard they can push themselves. And, you know, taking drugs sometimes, some people think you take drugs and it's easy. It's not. Sometimes you have to train more. You've got to be harder to train. I'm not sticking up for drug cheats because it's totally wrong. But for someone that's going to do it, they've got to put themselves through a lot of pain to actually get the gains. Interesting when you talk about it being almost an experiment in what the human body can be capable of. Because if you read the stuff that Salazar was doing, I think that's where it started. A kind of fascination with how fast can I make people go? How much of an improvement can I create in how short a space of time? It's fascinating. It's shocking. We haven't heard the last of it yet, and we're going to be getting our teeth into it throughout the show. Don't go anywhere.
Love sport. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Brexit will bring changes that affect businesses in many ways, particularly if you buy from EU suppliers, sell to EU customers, provide services to EU clients, and receive customer data from other businesses in the EU. Businesses need to prepare. Find out how at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit wedooh.com. We Do, the smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
How are you? How are you really? Modern life can be busy, and sometimes it's easier to look after others before looking after yourself. But there's only one you. And making small changes to your lifestyle now could improve your chances of staying healthier longer. So take the first step to a healthier you with our free How Are You quiz. See how you score and get personalised tips and support. From how to eat a little healthier to turning a 10-minute walk into exercise. Just search One You.
You probably think you're pretty good at multitasking behind the wheel. I mean, you have to multitask to drive. So what's wrong with checking your phone? The thing is, your brain simply doesn't work. Even a quick look at the message, or firing off a quick reply, affects your concentration and makes you less able to react to hazards. If you use a mobile phone while driving, you're 4 times more likely to crash. Think. Put your phone away.
Want to know how I change a light bulb? I hold the bulb and I wait for the world to revolve around me.
This is Love Sport.
We're going to be continuing our analysis of this situation with Mo Farah's former coach Alberto Salazar throughout the show. Very shortly, we're going to be speaking to Ross Tucker, who's a leading sports scientist, to get his take on just what testosterone, for example, what kind of advantage that can give an athlete. But for now, let's turn our attention to last night's big fixture in the Premier League. Manchester United and Arsenal stumbled, the pair of them, frankly, like a pair of drunks, to a grisly 1-1 draw at Old Trafford. It means Arsenal still haven't won there since 2006, and this was Arsenal boss Unai Emery's reaction after the game.
We had good chances with Bukayo for score the second goal, or the last with Liz Nelson after a good action with Willock, but also they had some chances to score. At the end, I think that draw is 2 teams deserve it.
United, meanwhile, have made their worst start to a season in 30 years, with just 2 wins from 7 league games. But Ole Gunnar Solskjaer insists those numbers are misleading.
You can talk about the results, I can talk about the 6 out of 7 games, good performances. West Ham, we know, was below par, but still not as bad as you lot made it out to be.
And United legend Roy Keane was in good form on Monday Night Football, as he often is. This is what he had to say about his old club's prospects this season.
The West Hams and the Leicesters are doing well. Chelsea's, if ever a chance for them to get in the top 4, it would be this season.
Are they in danger then of slipping out of the top 6?
No, I think top 6 would be okay. But I don't think that will satisfy these clubs. With the monies they've spent, I think it's got to be top 4.
Steve, Roy Keane obviously never short of an opinion, giving it quite large last night, saying neither Arsenal nor United look good for the top 4. I think certainly in Arsenal's case, that's nonsense. But what do you make of it?
You look at it, I feel sorry for Solskjaer. I love my football. And then suddenly, Solskjaer is such a great player, comes in, hailed as an absolute hero. Like I said, true British sport. Comes in, hero for a few weeks, and then suddenly everyone's there bashing him. And you look at Man United over the last few years; they're like a shipwreck, aren't they? Just going down, and it's a whole new restructure of a whole squad, of the whole team, that ethos. When they're under Ferguson, he was 1 game away from being sacked, and then suddenly all the managers that come through, I think that turn a whole squad around in the mentality have to have 3-4 years. My problem in football now, it's like they want the magic wand to go in there and go, bang, I want it changed straight away. You can't do that. Surely the people, the money men, obviously they want success straight away, but you've got an ethos. You've got to bring the youth system through. You've got to bring a culture into a club. Obviously the culture is rotten, and I personally think, when you've got players like Pogba there and that, it's never going to work. You need hard-working players that want to be at the club. And look at him, I don't think he wants to be there, and that's one of their star players. So you look at it and you think, right, let's get rid of them and just slowly rebuild again and give Solskjaer, if he's your man, give him 3 seasons at least. You can't just all of a sudden turn around, he's not top 6. I know the money's there and you've got to do it, but there's not that many coaches out there now that can turn teams around like that.
You mentioned there that you wouldn't want Pogba in the club. I know, obviously, you had exceptional success. You won the World Cup with England in 2003. Why is it you don't like Pogba? Would you have stood for that kind of character, that kind of very individualistic individual in a squad like you had in 2003?
No, you wouldn't. They wouldn't have been around. We had a few. Don't get me wrong, like Matt Dawson, stuff like that. But they still had the team in the back of their minds. They were there and they were like, right, it's all about the squad. You got to have a strong leader. We had Martin Johnson as leader, so really you got to have that real top dog. And I think still now, in the old days of Man United, someone like Pogba perhaps could have been there because as soon as he put his head up a little bit, he'd have been slapped, put into place. Play the football you got to do.
Possibly literally slapped.
Yeah,
as well,
exactly.
In the case of some of the former players.
Exactly. And that's just not happening now. You can tell that there's no leadership in the squad. Everyone's sort of fighting for it. And when you've got a person like Pogba there, it's terrible. You can see him just sort of pulling away. He plays when he wants to play, and it's a shame because when he does play, he's one of the best.
You just see it so rarely, though, right? And I wanted to get your thoughts on captaincy as well in, I guess, sport in general, but football in this case in particular, because Pogba's sometimes given the armband, and that's even after he said that he wants to leave the club. It's after he's put in a load of performances where it's pretty obvious that he doesn't care. And then sometimes when it's not Pogba, it's Ashley Young or it's David De Gea, and you look at these people, and then you look at Roy Keane up in the studio, and I know that he was a bit of a one-off, but once upon a time you had Roy Keane, John Terry, Patrick Vieira, Steven Gerrard, all of these players in the same division. It wasn't just world football that had a few great characters. It was one country and one league that had all these great leaders. You don't really get them the same way anymore, do you? And do you think that is a big part of why a fallen giant, if you like United and Arsenal to a degree, are suffering so badly?
Yeah, you should have a true clubman that's there, someone that's come through that club, the heart and soul of it. And I spoke the other week on a podcast about England having too many the foreign coaches and things like that, but at club level as well. Like you said, all the great teams that have won the Premiership in football have all had practically like a local type hero as their captain, or someone that's been through there for years that believes and that loves that club, rather than a bit. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to call Pogba a journeyman, but he's there for the money and he hasn't really earned the stripes to be a true Man United legend, to wear the armband. But the problem is there's no one at the club there that has really got that at the moment.
For me, Pogba becomes less of a United man for having been there as a kid. Because he was there as a teenager and he had his chance eventually to break through. He went before he got it because, to be fair, he saw Raphael play ahead of him in central midfield and that would be enough to drive anyone over the edge. But I think Steve's spot on. If you're a United man, if you want to play for that football club, you do not go to Juve in the first place.
Yeah, I think that's true, Johnny. And the point is, as Steve just said, he's motivated by the money. And I think that all of us are. Yeah, everyone is to a degree. Money is it plays a role in all the decisions that we make in life professionally. But the point is that you can't leave a club for money at 18, 19 years of age, go off to Juventus, do really well, come back to a club as the world record signing at the time and be the top earner as he has been until very recently when David De Gea got that ridiculous new contract, and try and claim that you're all about loyalty and all about playing for the badge. He said in the summer, I'm looking for a new challenge. Well, it's not as if you completed the challenge at Man United. It's insulting to the club supporters. But the point is that I don't think he cares. I think he gets that people are going to be annoyed by it, riled by it. I just don't think he can care because he's more concerned about trying to land a mega new contract. And he's got Mino Raiola as his agent, for goodness sake. There was a story last week said he wanted $600,000 a week. Blimey, I mean, we're paying out Alexis Sanchez. Yeah, well, we all would, but it's just ludicrous to think that he might get that. But you know what? If you're going to get it somewhere, it's somewhere like United that are handing out $400,000 a week to De Gea, who, as Mark Flanagan, our Northwest correspondent, has said multiple times, he wasn't wanted by anywhere else. He didn't need to give him $400,000 a week. He had a terrible second half of last season. He's the one that should have been saying, I want to stay at United. What are you willing to offer me? Oh, well, we would have given you more, but how about $200,000 a week? Because, quite frankly, his market value had dipped. So, the business sense seems to have gone out of Man United, and that makes me, as a fan, despair. And it's the worst start since 1989-90, when United came 13th. Can you rule out United dropping out of, say, the top half? I don't think you can on the current basis.
I think you absolutely can. Not rule out them dropping out the top six. We've seen top sides like Liverpool do that. But top half, you can. There is a lot being made of how bad Solskjaer's squad is. I'm going to keep saying this. It's not that bad. He's got that attacking lineup of Martial and Rashford. That is, anyone who thinks that's not a top half attacking lineup is an idiot.
When they're fit.
Yeah, but when they've got confidence as well. And it looks like they're lacking a bit of confidence, a bit of creativity as well. And the difference as well, because they're not playing that well, and they're not getting the results, and, you know, at Old Trafford, people would go there and they just wouldn't even get a point, you know, let alone try and think, actually, we can go there and win. So when, you know, under Ferguson, that last season was probably one of the worst squads he had under.
Yeah.
But they won games on the back of their reputation. That reputation's gone now. And, you know, these top teams, it's like it's their cup, or the bottom teams playing against Man United. That's like their cup final still, because it's like, how many times have we been to Old Trafford and got our backsides kicked and played quite well, but we've still lost on the back of the reputations, 2 goals down, and suddenly think, actually, they're not as good as we think. They haven't got that anymore. Teams will go there thinking, do you know what, we can go to Old Trafford and we can get a result here. Yeah. And that's the problem. Every game they're playing in now is like an FA Cup final, because every team wants to just kick them while they're down.
I thought the West Ham game was a good example of that. It was at the London Stadium, but I didn't even think West Ham were that good, and yet they cruised to a 2-0 win, and that just would not have happened. That might have happened once a season at absolute most, and it might have been in the midst of an injury crisis or something like that.
After Europe or something.
Or
something
like that.
Yeah.
There would have been a mitigating factor, not just 5 games into the season and everything's going pear-shaped, but the young players as well. So much is being put on there, Mason Greenwood and other youngsters like him, but how much more difficult is it coming into a team that's doing badly than one that's doing well? Ferguson was blooding youngsters in title-winning teams, and that's easier, isn't it, than coming into a team that's got the fans on its back, it's got its worst start for 30 years. That's not an environment to start your career in, is it?
No, I know I keep going back to rugby, but I was very lucky. In 2002, I came into an England team that were just winning. It was just, they went everywhere and they won. And, you know, I came in, I think in my first 30 games, I think I lost 1 game, thinking, you know, this is it. What's this all about? This is easy, this. And suddenly the older players started going, and suddenly it was hard to get a victory, because teams got that smell of victory and came and really thought, we can have a go at this. So, you know, with Man United, over the last probably 4 years, you actually look at the squads, the actual... Yeah, there might be quality players there that's in some teams, but there's not a quality squad that plays together, and that they just don't seem to be this unity that they're able to get. You know, they always had, you know, a great goalkeeper, which they've got now, but the defence still looks like it creaks. Yeah. You know, it's still conceding goals, and that's where Man United, for 10 years, 12 years, had their backbone. A good goalkeeper, really good centre-backs. They always had... You know, Neville,
Steve,
don't get me wrong.
Tuanzebe and Ashley Young as the fullbacks.
Yeah,
they're not the worst players.
Tuanzebe is not even a fullback.
He's not a fullback, and Ashley Young isn't a fullback either. He was a winger, for goodness sake, for most of his career. So we've got a converted winger and a converted centre-back playing at fullback. And how much money have United spent? 600 million in the last 6 years? Something crazy like that. It's just ridiculous. And yeah, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer probably isn't the best manager in the world, but at the same time, I think any manager could be there if he's not backed in the transfer market in the way he needs to be. I think it could be Solskjaer, Pochettino, even Pep Guardiola. There's only so much you can do with limited resources, aren't there? And
that's true.
I think talk of changing the manager actually it is pretty pointless unless there's a bit more of a significant. You know, we've been saying this for a long time, but a bit more of a significant change somewhere up the hierarchy, I think.
But you got to look as well. Would you look at Klopp? You know, I always look at him as a manager. He's outstanding man manager. You can just see him. You know, Pep as well. You see that. Would they sign Pogba? I don't think they would.
Yeah,
and that's the problem. Man United now, they smell of desperation. And they're just chucking money around, and that's the worst thing you can do, because suddenly you just get the journeyman there that wants some cash. You know, someone that's in the old days, people might have taken the pay cut because they wanted to play for Man United, and that's not there anymore. You know,
it's a tough time to be there. I would say when we're talking about Ashley Young, the winger at fullback, that's true. But Ashley Young is a winger who Martin O'Neill once compared in ability to Lionel Messi, and you'd play him at fullback without much complaint.
This is Love Sport.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just, there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it.
Sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
Hi, my name's Kurt Edwards. I work in advertising and live in Surrey. Last year, the family contents insurance was £745. A friend of mine had recommended a spokesmansaid.com. When it came for this year's renewal, I managed to get it for £403. So for those 10 minutes on that website, I saved over £340. Told my family, my friends, you'd be absolutely mad not to give it a go.
thespokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do the smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
Before you set off on a long journey, remember to check your vehicle. Are your tyres correctly inflated? And are the treads deep enough? Have you got enough fuel? Is your oil level right? Checking your vehicle doesn't take long, but can prevent a breakdown or accident and save you money. So, before you set off on a long journey, check your tyres, fuel and oil. Highways England, connecting the country.
Love sport. It's the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. Johnny Burrow and Guy Watts, joined by special guest Steve Thompson, 2003 Rugby World Cup winner, continuing our inquest after Alberto Salazar, Sir Mo Farah's former coach, was given a 4-year ban from athletics for doping offences. We're joined on the line by Ross Tucker, who is a leading sports scientist. Good afternoon, Ross. Thank you for joining us. We know that one of the main things that Salazar was found to have been doing in contravention of those rules was administering and providing testosterone to athletes over the legal limits. What are the advantages of testosterone use in that kind of way?
So in the world that Salazar inhabits, which is distance runners, it's a little bit different from what people may have heard of before, because testosterone is one of the anabolic steroids, which most people would think are synonymous with, say, 100-meter sprinters or power lifters, bodybuilders. But a distance runner also gets benefit because the drug would help them recover. And so the main challenge, obviously, for a long-distance runner is, can you do the volume and the intensity of training that's required in order to achieve performance, but also stay beneath some physiological ceiling at which your body starts to break down. So a lot of endurance athletes have used testosterone to help them improve their recovery, and that allows them to train harder, say 5 or 6 days a week instead of 4, and that obviously has benefits for performance.
And of course, there are no allegations against Sir Mo Farah, no reason to believe that he's done anything illegal, but we do know he took an infusion of L-carnitine before the 2014 London Marathon. Tell us a little bit about that substance. What is it primarily used for?
So L-carnitine is an interesting one because it's available as a supplement. Any one of your listeners could walk into a supplement shop or pharmacy and they'd be able to walk out with it in tablet form. And the theory has long been that if you take L-carnitine, it'll improve performance because it's involved in fat metabolism. Now, I'm not going to go into the specific biochemistry of that now, but
you'd lose me quite quickly.
Sorry?
You'd lose me quite quickly if you did.
Yeah, I may get lost myself. So L-carnitine is a substance in the, well, it functions in the metabolism of fat in the body. And so again, for an endurance athlete, if you can improve how well that person uses fat, then performance stands to improve. The trouble, as is reported in this report that's come out overnight, is that Salazar was impatient to use the supplement that's available commercially because it takes a long time, in theory, to have benefits and may not even help at all. And so what he then is alleged to have done, and found guilty of doing, is infusing it. And the problem there is that the anti-doping agencies only allow you to infuse certain volumes over certain time periods. Otherwise, it becomes a doping offense. So in that instance, the transgression is less about the L-carnitine and more about the fact that he's infusing it. And one of the first revelations that triggered all this is one of his former coaches accused him of using him effectively as a guinea pig. And they would pump this guy full of a liter full of this L-carnitine stuff. And they even were in contact with Lance Armstrong saying that when you do that, when you put a liter of L-carnitine into a person within an hour or 4 hours, they say the effects are miraculous, unbelievable benefits. And so that's then what he is alleged to have done with other athletes. As he mentioned in asking the question, none of it has stuck to any of the big name athletes.
It does sound to the non-expert ear that there is an element of the Dr. Frankensteins about this, frankly, the kind of looking at what can be done with the human body, how much L-carnitine can you use, for example. I know that the limit is supposedly 60 millilitres every 6 hours. He was upping it, in the case of that particular experiment, to once an hour. And it all sounds rather ominous. Can any of the things that he's said to have done be dangerous for the athletes taking them? Was he actually putting these people at risk?
I honestly don't know. The default is to say yes, of course, because when you infuse a drug at those dosages and you don't know, not necessarily even a drug, even a substance like L-carnitine, and you don't know what the potential consequences are, then you are taking risks. But as you said in asking it, there's really an element. Two things jump out. One is that they are very meticulous and careful about seeing how much can we get away with. You know, the testosterone stuff, he in his defense, he argued that he wanted to test how much testosterone it would take to trigger a positive because he says they were scared of sabotage. Now, that's to me ridiculous, because even if you could confirm in your own experiments how much testosterone it would take before you fail the test, that's not going to help you in the case of someone sabotaging you. It's a theoretical argument. It's useless to him. The other thing they're doing is they're trying to figure out what works. And so the combination of trying to figure out what works and what we can get away with is very nefarious and malicious sounding. It really does sound like that. And they were taking risks with athletes' health. The allegations include that he would tell athletes to take thyroid hormones, for instance. Now, those are very powerful drugs that are normally given by a doctor under prescription for people who very importantly need them. Salazar was playing doctor with people who didn't even need them. And of course, there have to be consequences to that. So the things that he's alleged to have done are very serious. And they're serious because they are, I mean, effectively, you've got a coach who is playing doctor with healthy athletes and turning them into patients for the sake of performance.
Well, the thing is, as well, when you look at it, it's all about winning, isn't it? As soon as you get medals or you get money up there, you're always going to get certain athletes that will go, I need this. This is what I need to do. And you'll always get your mad scientists that are always looking at, you know, like you said, they might not be looking at them as a human being. They're there as a new Formula One car that they can tinker with to try and get them to the best and just to push those boundaries. And, you know, I can never actually see this stopping moving forwards.
No, it's not going to, and that's the depressing reality, because so many of the things that are used nowadays are not even testable. So they will rationalize it to themselves and say, we're not cheating, because if we got caught with this, it's not even an offense. Thyroid hormone, for instance, the one that he was giving the athletes, is not banned. It's grossly unethical, and it is cheating, but it's not illegal. So that's the world that we live in now, is that, especially when you consider that we know other athletes are doping. You look at the drip feed, one after the next, of positive tests coming out. So you're an elite athlete and you're saying, you know, I don't want to be left behind. There's a way that I can keep up. I've got a compliant doctor and I've got a compliant coach. And that's what this decision has revealed, is there's a partnership between a coach and a doctor, and they are willing to do what it takes to make the athlete go faster.
I could always,
and now you have to interpret that. You interpret every other performance against that background now.
I could always remember sitting down with the lads when we were just having time, you know, having a coffee and things like that, and we'd always talk about, you know, the drugs in sport and athletics and stuff. And the one thing we always came up with, well, people are always going to do it. It's like the Tour de France. People are always going to do it. Why don't we do a natural one and then a drug Olympics? So people can get it out there and go, right, yeah, I just want to push my body. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get there. And others to say, you know, I don't believe in that. Let's just go there and natural. I know people talk about sponsorship and things like that, but surely that would get rid of it as well.
Well, I mean, if there was a World Cup on the go right now for definitely clean athletes and definitely doped athletes, which one do you think people would watch?
Well, it's hard to say, because sometimes when you do see it, you're a bit like, you know, you do want to see the natural athletes, what the body can do, but then also there is that point of, actually, how fast can someone run? It doesn't matter what they put inside them. Let's just see how fast they can run or how high they can jump and things like that. But, you know, people are starting to get a little bit sick of it as well, I think, of, you know, people doping and people pushing the boundaries and going a little bit too far.
Yeah, so I guess two things. One is there space in the calendar for 2 events? Imagine 2 of everything. And then the second thing is, if you could guarantee that the earnings, the prize money, this prestige was the same in both, how would you stop people coming from the dirty one into the clean one? Because the incentive would not change. It would still be there. Because I could earn the same. I could earn the same through less training because I'm a cheat than I would have to. You know, I could compete against lesser athletes because they're not doping. So what would stop me? So I'm not sure that it would change all that much. And ultimately, the problem is that if you took anti-doping away, then the ceiling that exists would be non-existent. And the only deterrent to how much drugs or how many drugs an athlete would take would be how willing they are to risk their health. And so young 15, 16-year-old boys playing rugby or wanting to become track and field athletes or Olympic champions would effectively have to choose to either take drugs or stop.
Yeah.
And that's the reason that anti-doping has to exist, because you give someone effectively what we call a Hobson's choice. It's all or nothing.
Yeah, not a world we want to live in. But Ross, it's been illuminating talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. Ross Tucker there, a leading sports scientist, giving us the real detail and, of course, the science behind all of these allegations and, of course, the things that Alberto Salazar has been found guilty of. Simply shocking, really. But you can see how someone would get to these extremes. You can see how the genuinely scientific experimenting with, well, how much testosterone can I give an athlete without it giving a positive test report could eventually become thyroid drugs when you don't have a thyroid problem, which in turn could become doping.
It's just such a horrible grey area, Johnny, and the problem is that there aren't like really clear answers to a lot of the questions that we have, and I think that's what makes it so much more frustrating. So we now know some of what Alberto Salazar has been apparently doing in his 18 years or so since Nike Origin Project was founded, and he was at the forefront of that. But I've got a couple of questions that I really want answering, and I want them answering as a sports fan, really, as an athletics fan, as normally a fan of Mo Farah, as someone who just wants to know, or who wants to be confident that they can believe in the people that we're watching and treating as heroes. And I think that there's a couple of things that really jump out at me, and one of them concerns Mo Farah, and one of them concerns UK athletics from everything that we now know, because there's been allegations going on, suspicions, if you like, around Salazar for a long time, for 4 years to be precise about how long it's been in the public realm, for perhaps longer if you're on the investigative side of all this. And I want to go back to 2015. 2015 was when there was a Panorama episode called Catch Me If You Can aired, and it was done by Mark Daly, who's one of their chief Panorama reporters. And it essentially, using whistleblowers, brought these allegations to light for the first time. And at the time, Mo Farah held a press conference and it addressed these allegations, and he talked about his name being dragged through the mud by the media. And forget the fact that he has since gone on to be proven, Alberto Salazar, to have been using illegal methods to coach his athletes, to improve his athletes. At the time, Mo Farah was being implicated because his coach was being alleged to be using these techniques, which, no, hadn't been proven at the time, but they were serious allegations which have, as it happens, turned out to be true. Mo Farah's name wasn't being dragged through the mud. It wasn't Mo Farah who was, being accused of trafficking testosterone and administering it illegally and giving it to young athletes, but it was the coach who he had chosen to go and work with, a high-profile coach at a high-profile project. And I think that attitude from the start, it really stank. And the fact was, he stuck with Alberto Salazar for another 2 years. Remember, in 2016, there were more sort of reports suggesting that Salazar had almost certainly, was the way they described it, broken anti-doping rules. He still stuck by him. He won double gold at the Rio Olympics that year. He remained a national treasure. He's been made a Knight of the Realm. He's won Sports Personality of the Year. He's doubtless made himself an enormous fortune as well. And then in 2017, he did decide to stop working with Alberto Salazar. Around the same sort of time, he dedicated himself to becoming a road runner, a marathon runner. Alberto Salazar, by the way, as an individual, happens to have a much stronger background as a marathon runner, a long-distance runner in that sense himself. So it seems strange timing to me. And I want to know, Mo Farah, why did you stay with him in 2015? And then why did you leave him in 2017? Because those things don't completely add up to me.
No, true, but let's be fair to Mo. It is possible that in 2015 he knew that Salazar was pushing boundaries with things like the thyroid drugs, which were completely legal, and he was happy to push those boundaries because it's legal and he wanted to perform at the highest possible level. It is also possible that in 2017 perhaps he got cold feet, or he got some more information that we don't know about. I have no idea. But the fact that he left him in 2017 doesn't mean that Mo Farah was behaving badly, and it doesn't mean that he had any concrete evidence that Salazar was guilty.
Johnny, you're quite right, but I would like Mo Farah to tell us those things. And I don't think that it is beyond the realms of possibility or feasibility for him to come public and say these things. This is
frankly,
the guy who's
I need more than him to just say it, because it's very easy for him to say it. He's going to say it.
I would like him. I would like there to be more. I would like there to be conclusive, overwhelming proof of everything in life, but you can't get that. But what you can get is some people doing a little bit more than they have done or they are doing, and I don't think it would be the hardest thing in the world for Sir Mo to go public with some of these things. But will he or not? That will be interesting to see. And also, and we'll talk about this, of course, in depth throughout the show, but I think that UK athletics have serious questions to answer, because remember, they did a report of their own into the BBC Panorama allegations, and they declared that they were happy with Farah's relationship with Alberto Salazar. So I think they've got serious questions to answer. Was their investigation thorough enough? Neil Black, who was performance director at the time, he said that the guy was a genius. Well, those comments don't look too wise now. He's still involved with UK athletics. Matt Lawton, the Times journalist, who's been one of the leading journalists investigating all this, we're speaking to him later. It'll be interesting to see what he makes of all that as well. Fascinating stuff, this. It really is.
But when you look at it, you want him to come out and say it, because look at Lance Armstrong. How many years did he turn around and just say, "I am not a drug cheat. I am not a drug cheat"?
Well, you have
so
to say
when it finally came out, they could go all the way back and say, "You're a liar," and they stripped him of everything. So he's one of them. If there is some question marks around, if he comes out and just says, "No, I'm totally clean," and in the future technology gets even better when it comes to drug testing, and they test it, and he can turn around and go, "I told you so."
Absolutely. We just need that transparency. We'll also be talking about the commercial aspect later in the show. Note the name of that training centre. It was, of course, in Oregon, but it was sponsored by Nike. The UK Athletic Association, hugely supported by Nike, with a deal running until 2030. Could that now go put?
Giving your team the coverage they deserve. Love Sport Radio.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just, there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it.
Sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage.
Tenna men.
Cage.
Pants and pads.
You're
discreet. Masculine.
You're right.
Secure absorption zone. Buy online or in shops.
You're
Tenna men. Keep control.
Urine?
No.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
If you see somebody showing any of the signs of a stroke, you don't have to think about it, you just dial 999. Use the FAST test. F. Face. Has their face fallen on one side? Can they smile? A. Arms. Can they raise both arms and keep them there? S. Speech. Is their speech slurred? T. Time. Time to call 999 if you see any one of these signs. Act fast, make the call, dial 999.
I'm not a snob. I just don't want to be in the same car as my chauffeur.
This is Love Sport.
Billy Vanapola has admitted that, in his own words, handbags were thrown after the 2015 World Cup exit for England. Eddie Jones wanted to get all of those ghosts exorcised before this campaign, so he calls there to be psychologist-led honesty sessions to help the lads deal with those wounds from 2015. We are, of course, joined in the studio by 2003 World Cup winner Steve Thompson. Steve, how important is it that they talked through all of those issues?
I think you've got to talk through them, but I think this is the problem with it nowadays. I think everyone's just that little bit softer. Mentally, definitely, everyone's got to be looked after, and everyone's got to be, we used to have brutal sessions, and it used to be, Wayne Smith, the Kiwi, was at Northampton. He brought in, you stab him in the belly, not in the back. I was brought up in Northampton with like Matt Dawson, Tim Rodber, and especially Tim Rodber, who was our big captain at the time. When you're in doing a debrief, you can say what you want.
So when you say savage sessions, you're not talking about physically testing. You're talking about verbally going at each other.
Yeah, definitely. Then it used to go out onto the training ground, and if someone had a little bit of a grudge, you get it out of the way and it's done, And one of those times you'd go into training, you'd be a little bit annoyed of something that's going on at home or something, and you'd come in and you could be able to give someone a quick whack and everyone would laugh about it afterwards, you know. But about the honesty sessions and that, you know, they are needed, you know. Number of times these little mountains, you know, little molehills all of a sudden explode because you're under the microscope of what's going on, especially after that's such a, you know, bad sort of World Cup campaign in 2015. Also, they had such a good, after that, under Eddie Jones, the first couple of seasons, Six Nations Grand Slam champions, and suddenly the wheels fell off. You know, you've got to stay honest with each other. And I think sometimes, you know, it's easy to blow smoke up people's backsides when it's going well. It's when it's not going well. And, you know, under Clive Woodward, our most brutal, you know, debriefs used to be when we'd won a game. And that's when he used to look at it. And that's when, you know, you could say someone would have a mistake. And I can remember making a mistake in the game. And literally straight away I thought, that's not going to look good on Monday. I am absolutely going to get the hell ripped out of me for that. So, you know, you've got to look at it. And there should be honesty in the squad anyway. If you're someone that's at the top level, people should be able to say what they think. And if they're unhappy with a performance or the way someone's doing something, if you're in a high-performance team, that should be a given. And that's what I see as a team that's winning and doing well should do.
Do you think people worry too much about being liked these days? Do they worry too much about being popular? In 2003, were you all big mates, or were you there to get a job done?
Not at all big mates. You know, there was characters from all different walks of life then, and you see, you know, the one thing is there was respect for everyone. There's people I didn't really like. I did not like them. I just had nothing in common with them. So, you know, you have your little groups that you sort of come to, but would I have picked anyone else in that squad? No, I wouldn't. So for me, you know, it's all about respect. If you respect someone, it's when you lose respect for someone that's in your squad, that's when you got your problem.
And how important is the psychological side of things? You mentioned when we first brought this topic up, people are too soft these days. When you were winning back in 2003, were you concerned about each person's mental state, or were you just concerned about the performances on the pitch?
I think you could just see it as well, especially when you're on tour and you're away and things like that. You can just see sometimes that people are, you know, they sort of disappear and they're in the room a little bit more or something like that. So suddenly you just say, oh, are they all right? Or you say to someone that they knew well, you know, oh, is he all right? He just seems a little bit down or something like that. So, and then suddenly they'll go around, pick up, oh, something's happened at home. The dog's been run over or something like that, or the missus is giving them a bit of grief over the phone, you know, because they think we're on holiday having a great time when really we're not.
Yeah.
You know, and things like that. So, you know, you just, when you're a good squad and you understand each other, you know, they might not be your friends, but you can just see someone's behaviours change a little bit. So you know someone in the squad that are friends with them and say, look, you go and have a little word, just see if they're all right. Whereas I think when squads aren't really together, they train together and then they just splinter off and they don't actually socialise together as much and don't understand each other.
Well, you talk about being a good squad. We got a cracking squad this time around. 2 wins from 2 for England so far. But things step up on Saturday when we play Argentina. Kyle Sinclair has started both games so far, and ahead of the Argentina game, he's been speaking about the effort he's made to improve his on-field discipline in the last year or so.
The only way you get peace is when you know your why and your purpose. And my purpose is obviously to play rugby and trying to inspire, you know, a younger generation and kids similar to myself. So, you know, once I found that and that's what I wanted to do, you know, everything else has been quite plain sailing.
Steve, Sinclair is outstanding at his best, but he has got quite a temper on him. Is that something you could relate to as a younger player breaking onto the international scene?
There's tempers and there's stupidity, and sometimes our squad at the moment just show a bit of stupidity. You know, we keep making the same mistakes over and over again. You know, it's just silly penalties. That's the one thing that can lose. We can beat ourselves in this World Cup just by giving away stupid penalties. And you know, it's all this. The hard man of rugby's sort of gone out of it as much. The old sort of enforcer type thing that used to be around, that's gone. You know, it's all about discipline. There's so many cameras on every ruck. There's no need. Well, there's just no way you can do the cheap shots or get riled up by the opposition. Yeah, be physical, do it with inside the rules. But sometimes now, when they start just doing silly things and pumping their chest out and that, it's, you know, all it does is take your focus off the game. So you know, you see it, and they've just got to grow up a little bit, and they are showing that they are. But, you know, teams will know if they just keep going at them, there is a possibility of an easy 3 points or even a 7 points just because someone's been sin-binned or they have done something silly.
It's fascinating hearing you say that the hard man's gone out of rugby, because I look at those 15 or so players, the skinny little weed that I am, and I think there are no hard men in there. What are you talking about?
Love sport.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Brexit will bring changes that affect businesses in many ways, particularly if you buy from EU suppliers, sell to EU customers, provide services to EU clients, and receive customer data from other businesses in the EU. Businesses need to prepare. Find out how at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
Have you had enough of extortionate energy bills? A spokesman said could help you find the cheapest energy deals on the market. Don't take our word for it. There's hundreds of spokesman said customers who've saved big. Brian from Derbyshire saved £400 on his energy bills, and Tony from Northampton saved a massive £2,800 on his gas and electric. Spokesmansaid.com, the leading price comparison site where you can switch to the cheapest energy tariffs on the market in just minutes.
Spokesmansaid.com, fighting for you, saving you money.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do, the smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
Whoa! Look how much saturated fat is in these chocolate biscuits. It's surprising how much is in our food and drinks. For us kids, eating too much saturated fat can lead to harmful fat building up inside, which we can't see, increasing the risk of heart disease or stroke when we get older. So be food smart. Download the free Change for Life food scanner app and start making healthier choices today.
We got a cracking hour coming up for you on the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. You're with me, Johnny Burrow and Guy Watts, joined of course by special guest and Rugby World Cup winner back in 2003, Steve Thompson. We're going to be continuing our inquest into Alberto Salazar. Mo Farah's former coach has been given a 4-year ban for doping violations. What does this mean for the sport more broadly? We'll be hearing from former world champion Ewan Thomas, and we're also going to be talking to Peter Jackson, former Huddersfield player and manager. The Terriers still winless this season. The Cowley brothers have come in 1 point from 3 games. Are they the right men to turn it around?
On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is Love Sport News.
We do seem to have had some kind of technical difficulty there. We normally go over to Sky for the news, which doesn't seem to have come through. So we're going to talk all the latest on Salazar. If you're just joining us, this is Alberto Salazar, the former coach of Mo Farah. He's been given a 4-year ban from athletics for doping violations relating to various things, but primarily testosterone. We're joined in the studio by Rugby World Cup winner Steve Thompson. Steve, obviously you and all of your teammates would have recognised the importance, the significance of a clean team, a clean athlete in all walks of life, but particularly in a sport such as rugby where there is such a significance in size and in strength. Can you see how there's a temptation to bend those rules?
As players, we didn't generally try and bend the rules at all. I must admit, we were quite a clean sort of lot as such, I think. But we did have the scientists behind it who we trusted, who we put there, and they'll tell you to take a drink. We took it, and we got drug tested regularly. So there was no failed drug tests and that. But we left it down to the specialists to go, right, this is on the limit. This is what we can do, and you do it. Whatever that's 1% that can just push you on in front of your opposition, you would try it. I'm not saying go and break the rules by any means, but you've always got to be pushing them and just see that extra. What extra you can make yourself and get yourself fitter that little bit faster. Us in the front row, for me especially was always trying to keep the weight off me. With other people, the wingers and that, they're the proper athletes as such, really. They're the ones that need that little bit of pace, that little bit of size. They're the ones that, some of the lads work so hard on putting weight on, and all of a sudden they get a sickness bug. They've lost 3-4 kilos of muscle in literally in weeks, which took them months to put on. So they're always looking at ways of getting the muscle mass up. Like I said, for me, it was keeping the weight off. That's the thing about rugby, all shapes and sizes as such. And, the nutritionists and the doctors were the ones that really were working hard in the background, how we keep the weight on for some people and keep the weight off for other people.
We're told, in terms of just believing the doctors, believing the experts, that Dr. Brown, who was the doctor working with Salazar at this training camp, was basically... athletes were just told that if you went there, you didn't ask too many questions. That was the culture. You trusted those people, whether they were right or wrong.
Yeah, that's one of the things that is most uncomfortable for me about a lot of these things, whether it's in cycling, athletics, or another sport as well. You feel like young people, often young, inexperienced athletes who are trying to make their way in the sport, make a name for themselves, make some money for themselves, are led astray, exploited by powerful people. Powerful people exploiting that power happens in every walk of life. But when it directly impacts, the health of you, of course, on your body and all the rest of it, not to mention having such a lasting, damaging impact on their career if found guilty, of course, as well, I just think it is a really, really terrible, terrible plight. And I'm pleased to see when people get punished, because I know it happens and you need to see it clamped down on. But one way or another, athletics is in the news at the moment. This is our main story this afternoon, talking later to Matt Lawton, journalist from The Times. If you missed it earlier, we had a great chat with the leading sports scientist, Ross Tucker, as well, which is great. We'll play that for you again a little bit later on. But we also spoke earlier, well, you did, Johnny, to Ewan Thomas, our man in Doha, of course, out there for the World Championships. We got his thoughts on the whole Salazar story and the importance of clean sport and everything as well. But we started by asking him a little bit about some of the British stars. Adam Jamili running for gold in the 200-metre final in Doha tonight. That's around about 8:40. Dina Asher-Smith still going well too. We've got a rising star of the sport in Noah Lyles, the 200-metre likely gold medal winner. We started by asking Ewan, though, what the chance that Adam Jamili had of winning a medal in the race tonight was.
100%. I mean, he's run under 20 seconds in the past. I think it's going to probably take 19.9 to get a medal out here. It's going to be tough, but there's something about Adam which you can't help but love as well. He's such a likeable character within the team, and he seems a lot stronger. In years gone by, he's been very good, but the last sort of 20 metres he's faded a bit. But as you said, he cruised last night. He looked really comfortable, and I think he's in the shape to run under 20 seconds. And if he does that, he's definitely in for a shout for a good medal.
Dina Asher-Smith as well, of course, is another huge hopeful for the British. She ran a best time of the day to reach the 200-metre semi-finals. She's looking, as you said yesterday, very, very good for that gold medal. But we've seen either disqualification or withdrawal of a lot of her potential rivals. Would that diminish the achievement at all?
I don't think so, no. There's still a lot of good athletes in there. Yeah, of course, when big names do drop out, Dashni Skiffers, she dropped out with a groin injury. You can't help but think, yes, that's someone else out of the way, but you've still got to execute your perfect race. But I saw Dina last night, actually. I was filming a bit behind the scenes about the medal ceremonies, and I was in the green room, and I was chatting to Dina and her mum, Julie, and they were both really relaxed, and I was almost like, yeah, the 100 metres, that was amazing, and she was like, yeah, it was brilliant, but still got the 200 to concentrate on. She's so professional now. One medal isn't enough for her. I know she's got her sights on gold, and I think the 200 is probably her stronger event, despite who is there or isn't there. I honestly think she's going to be crowned world champion. I know she can do it.
That said, it's the first time she's ever really been the favourite on a global stage. Do you have any doubts at all? Could that pressure get to her?
I don't think so. I mean, she's a world-class athlete, and you get two types of athletes. The ones that feel the pressure and shrink and think, oh no, there's too much pressure, everyone's expecting me to win, and they crumble. Or the athletes who rise to 6'5" tall and walk out there and think, yeah, the world's watching, they all think I'm going to do it, watch this. And I think she's that type of athlete. She's not arrogant, she's a nice person, but she's a fierce competitor, and I think she'll like the fact that the world is talking about her. And look, the pressure's on her for the right reason. We're talking about her because she's brilliant. You know, we're not talking about her because, oh, she'll do well to make the final. We're saying this young 23-year-old from London is going to make the final and possibly favourite to win it. I think she'll do it.
Well, in the men's 200 metres, of course, British focus always on Jamili. But let's touch on Noah Lyles. He is an incredible athlete, tipped for gold here. Is he in line to become a kind of Usain Bolt-style household name?
I don't think anyone's going to ever become a Usain Bolt household name. I think what he did for the sport was absolutely amazing. Bolt took our sport to another level. He was just a character, the size of the man, the stature, everything about him, his charisma. But I think Noah Lyles is a brilliant athlete, and I think, to be fair, he probably is favourite to win that. But if Adam can get a bronze or maybe even a silver, that would be an amazing achievement. But I think Noah Lyles is going to probably run something along the lines of 19.6, 19.7. I think he's going to run something very fast.
And off the track, we've had some pretty shocking news in the world of athletics today after Alberto Salazar, who is, of course, Mo Farah's former coach, he's been banned for 4 years for doping violations. Now, of course, Mo is not working with him anymore, but he did continue to do so for 2 years after the first allegations. Is it a good look to be connected to someone like this?
Of course not, but Mo's never failed a drugs test. You know, just because you're working with someone who may have a checkered past, unfortunately, people will point the finger and tarnish you with that brush, but it's not necessarily, necessary to do that. I think it's bad for the sport. I think for any sport, when there's any doping scandals, it's a real shame because it just takes the focus away from the positive stories. Really, we should be all talking about the Dina Asher-Smiths of this world or the Karsten Warholms retaining his 400 hurdle world title last night. But unfortunately, the news is about Salazar, and it's not great for the sport. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think the only way forward to clean this sport up is get rid of the rotten apples. And if it's proven he is a rotten apple, then unfortunately it's true, but he needs to be gone.
Well, you've had about as close a personal experience with being undone by doping while as a clean athlete as anyone. You, of course, only got your World Championship gold in 2010, years after you should have had it. So remembering that hurt, remembering that injustice, how important is it that the authorities need to keep chasing after those bad apples?
It's really important. I mean, unfortunately, it brings bad headlines and it brings negativity to the sport when another doper is found. But it has to happen because you don't want people watching your sport and all of a sudden saying, oh, that Dina Asher-Smith, I hope she is a clean athlete. But unfortunately, you'll always have people, because there are bad people within the sport, pointing the finger. So I think it's almost like you need to have a complete clear out. Get rid of all the nonsense, get rid of all the abusers of the rules of this wonderful sport and focus on the good, clean athletes. Because let's be honest, 99.99% of the athletes are clean, hard-working athletes. But it does only take that sort of 0.01% to give the sport a bad name. We see it in cycling. Unfortunately, we see it in lots of other sports. But people will bend the rules. That's life. There's big money to be made in sport, and unfortunately, people will try and find ways around the test methods and so forth to gain that advantage. But I think it is a good thing, although it's negative at the moment. Looking forward to the future, it's a good thing that drugs cheats are caught and kicked out of the sport.
But with all of the rumours around the likes of Christian Coleman, are we getting towards a point now where if you run fast, people are going to accuse you or at least suspect you of bad behaviour?
I hope not, because that's a horrible world we live in. If you start to point the finger at every single athlete just because they're good. Listen, some people are born with a God-given talent. They work hard. They've got a great coach. They can keep injury-free for a number of years, and they can progress and naturally get faster and faster. I think it's a real shame if we start questioning everyone who performs well, because that's not the right way to look at life. It's like a top businessman. You don't want to look at them and say, oh, he's done well in business. Oh, I bet he's corrupt. I bet he's crooked somewhere along the lines. That's not fair. It's not necessarily true. So I hope, Johnny, that never does happen. As I said, it's bad timing for the sport, especially when the World Championships is on, when a scandal does come out. But unfortunately, I think you need these scandals to highlight the good people.
Ewan, spot on. Great to talk to you as always. Thanks very much for your time. Ewan Thomas, their former world champion, giving his take on the brilliant athletes of the World Championships and the bad as well. Great to chat to Ewan earlier, and don't miss Adam Jamili in the final of the men's 200 metres tonight. That's about 8:40 p.m. our time. Ewan says he's got a great chance of a medal. And interesting as well what Mr. Thomas said about the bad athletes highlighting the good. The bad apples still being very much in the minority, but also getting caught with a bit more frequency.
Yeah, I guess, Johnny, and we spoke, I think it might have been to Matt Lawton about this, who's joining us later, the journalist at the Times, chief sports correspondent there. It was around the time of the Christian Coleman story, because it was him who broke that story, the guy who's just won the 100-metre title in Doha in the World Championships, done it in a time that puts him the 6th fastest man ever, but did it in front of an almost empty stadium that, obviously, while terrible for the sport, was quite symbolic, I think, because with that story that Matt broke about him having missed 3 drugs tests in the space of 12 months, it raised real questions about how seriously he takes the anti-doping rules that are in place for extremely good reason.
And you had Justin Gatlin at second.
Well, Justin Gatlin at second. Exactly, Johnny. So it's one of those where you can watch it and you can go, wow, brilliant. These guys are so fast. We love watching that. And then you think for all of 3 seconds about it, and you come up with, in the case of both the first and second place people, questions, big questions about both of them, to say the least. In Gatlin's case, 2 drugs bans, I think, give you the answers as well. But I wanted to touch on the whistleblowers in this story, because I think it's a really important part of the story, without whom, this never would have happened. And someone on Twitter earlier said something that I really liked, and it used a quote from Alberto Salazar back in 2013. He said, "We know we're never going to test positive for anything. No way in the world." And they said he was right. He said, "Instead, it took a few brave whistleblowers and journalists to pressure USADA into a long and difficult investigation for this sanction. Sport needs more of them." And to give them, full credit, the 2 people I think who deserve the most credit are Steve Magnus and somebody called Kara Goucher. Sorry, I don't know exactly how you pronounce that. But Steve was a former assistant coach to Salazar at the Nike Oregon project. And he lifted the lid, essentially, said that he was victim of, all sorts of aggressive behaviour as a result. Salazar disputes his version of events. So Steve Magnus says he left because of the anxiety issues he was suffering with, but Salazar says it was his inability to coach elite athletes. So obviously different stories there with different agendas, but Steve Magnus has been one of the people to come forward and tell his side of the story, lift the lid on what was really going on at the Nike Oregon project. His tweet today, I thought something that's quite nicely. Tell the truth, own your mistakes, choose the difficult path. In the short term, it might feel horrible, but over the long haul, it's the only path to take. Speak up, stay true to your convictions. None of us are perfect, but we can all aspire to be better. #CleanSport. And what I thought was interesting there was his mentioning of owning your mistakes, and it made me think of whistleblowers in other cases. Well, we were talking a little bit before we came on air, weren't we, about Icarus.
Amazing.
How brilliant a documentary that is. It's not directly about this, of course. It's all about what went on with Russia and the Winter Olympics in Sochi in 2014. But it is a fascinating watch, well worth watching if you haven't seen it. I think it's available on Netflix, and it really does make you think. Obviously, the reference is flying too close to the sun, but the dangers of and the illegality and the immorality of trying to fly too close to the sun, trying to push human limits too far.
I think as well, it shows, I'll just go into it quickly, it's just about a cyclist in America that wants to do the amateur Tour de France, and he's sick of just coming in the top 20, so he's gone, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to try drugs this year and just see how far my body can go and how far it can push me. And then, of course, it goes into the story of how he finds the Russian and just opens up all the can of worms as such. But it's a good way to actually see how testosterone and steroids now are used and the difference they can do and with the training you do. And it just explains it all. So you'll see it, there and then. And it is a proper documentary. Like he's there with a home camera doing a lot of it as well. And, for me, it's a superb watch, just like the Lance Armstrong, the second documentary done, when it unearths halfway through the documentary how we find out that he is a drug tree. And literally, the cameras are in his house when it all comes true. So for me, if you can watch that one, I watched both of them on the plane, actually, and it was the best thing, both of them. I'm not massively into sport documentary. It's weird. Sometimes I just don't watch, but those two were just phenomenal.
It highlights the difference, and I think you're right to point out that if you like low-budget nature of Icarus, although that Lance Armstrong one isn't particularly a massive budget operation either, you look at something like Amazon and Manchester City All or Nothing, and it's got all the fancy cameras and angles and effects in the world, but it doesn't give you a real kind of insight. It doesn't give you much of a story that you didn't know before. These are what tell us what really goes on, and that's what makes it so fascinating. And Lance Armstrong, by the way, not totally irrelevant to all of this, Johnny, as you pointed out earlier, Alberto Salazar gleefully emailed his friend Lance Armstrong, as Matt Lawton described it in his piece earlier, to tell him about the brilliant effects that L-carnitine can have. That's one of the substances, I assume, that was being, shall we say, wrongly administered to athletes at the Nike Oregon project. So it really is fascinating stuff, all this.
L-carnitine also sounds like an extra from Narcos. Oh, the episode in which they finally track down L-carnitine. Of course, we're focusing a lot on Sir Mo Farah, not because there are allegations against him, but simply because of those links to his former coach. But there are going to be links to Galen Rupp as well. And when we're talking about whistleblowers, Karen Goucher blew the whistle on Rupp and herself, not in terms of wrongdoing, but saying Salazar had tried to get both her and Rupp on prohibited IV saline drips. And of course, Panorama and ProPublica alleged that he'd been given testosterone by Salazar at the age of 16. This is a guy with a silver at the 2012 Olympic Games, a bronze in 2016 in Rio, and a 2017 World Marathon Majors gold. So from an American point of view, there are questions to answer as well.
This is Love Sport.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it.
Sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage.
Tenna men.
Cage.
Pants and pads.
You're
discreet. Masculine.
You're
secure absorption zone. Buy online or in shops.
You're
Tenna men. Keep control.
Urine?
No.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
There are many things a mother can pass on to her baby. Her smile, her eye colour, and her immunity to whooping cough. Whooping cough is a very dangerous illness for young babies, and at the moment it's spreading fast. A simple vaccination during your pregnancy can help to protect your baby in their first weeks. Please speak to your GP, nurse, or healthcare professional and pass on your immunity.
Putin is a great singer. I love him in that musical, Putin on the Ritz.
This is Love Sport.
We've got some big games in the Champions League tonight, not least Tottenham Hotspur, who host Bayern Munich. Manchester City host Dinamo Zagreb, and Kevin De Bruyne has been ruled out of that game for the Manchester side with a little muscle strain picked up in the win against Everton. But from a Spurs point of view, Steve, all looking a bit wobbly. Pochettino not a happy camper. There are rumblings of discontent in the squad. If they get soundly beaten at home by Bayern Munich, which is a serious possibility, is it going to be crisis point?
It's another one where you look at it and you look at the squad and people not being happy and the leaders sort of starting to fall apart. Not fall apart a bit, but look at Poch. He's there and you can tell he's not happy. And when your top dog's not happy, everyone else behind him suddenly looking around. Kane the other day for the first time came out, told the players they've got to grow up, and going against them. That's never happened before. They've always been positive about things going on, but you see it, and it's just not quite right there. And I can see Poch leaving at the end of the season. If he goes, I can definitely see Kane going, because once again, you look at the managers around the world, who is there that can do a job and take that club to another level?
And I agree completely. And of those managers, who would take that job with respect to Tottenham? I'm interested by what you said about Harry Kane calling his teammates out. Do you like that from him? Is that a sign of leadership or is it a sign of frustration?
I think it's a little bit of both. But, normally they do it behind closed doors. But you see him, for him to actually come out and say, look, it's about time we grow up. I think that's a bit of frustration as well, and that's a team where, you're going away. They should have 2-0 up away from home against a team that's not very good, let's be honest. You should be finishing that 3-4, 5-0 really, or closing up and not conceding. To concede 2 goals, it just shouldn't happen. Last season I know they lost games in the group, they got to the final, Liverpool the same. But you should be going up thinking, we're better than that. And that's the frustration. They haven't started that well in the league either, really. It's not just that, it's the performances and what they're lacking that buzz. The one thing about Tottenham is, you look to them, everyone wrote them off at the beginning of last season. They hadn't made that many signings. They came out and they looked great. They really did. This year, they're just starting to waver a bit, and you can just see they haven't got the belief in themselves. And they haven't got, I'm not going to say they haven't got the belief in the manager, but people can see that they're not quite happy, and you can always tell with injuries in squads. It sounds weird when there's a buzz about, people don't get injured because they don't want to not play, because if they don't play they lose their place and it's hard to get back in. Suddenly you start seeing players pull out with slight muscle strains and things like that. You look at yourself and think, is that a player that doesn't really want to play for the manager?
Well, those murmurs of discontent are not going away, but before today's game, Pochettino has denied rumours that there are issues between certain players in the dressing room.
When the transfer window closed, I was very clear that all the players were commitment to give their best with 1 year contract or with 5 year contract. And that is not a point to discuss, and it's not an excuse for the team to will have a good result or no good result.
He's also talked up tonight's opponents, Bayern Munich, and their chances of winning a 6th European Cup this season.
They are a club that every season try to prepare to try to win the competition, the Champions League, because the history say that. It's a great club, great players, of course, amazing coaching staff. It's a club, historic, can be one of the contenders for sure to win the Champions League.
Do we believe him when he says everything is fine in the dressing room?
I don't think there is. I still think there's, you don't want to just keep trying to make problems and talk about it and be negative and things like that. But we've seen the way when Tottenham are going well. My mate's son supports them, loves them massively, and I burst his bubble last week, which is quite bad because it's doing it to a 12-year-old. I think on the verge of. And I said to him, he's through and through Spurs, and he's like, they're amazing. Look how, and I'm like, William, you got to grow up. They're not looking.
Sound like Harry Kane, Steve.
They're not looking good. The manager, you can tell the manager's doesn't look like he wants to be there. Harry Kane is questioning his players, and he's not playing that well at the moment. You can just see, and they've got some injuries as well. They've got star players that want out, and they try to get out, and they tried all their best to get out there, and still they look like they're sulking a bit. With Eriksen, but you think to yourself, in January, what's going to happen? Are they actually going to go out there and spend? That's the one thing they just don't do. They need to rejuvenate that squad. They need to show the top players, actually, we're serious now. We've got this great stadium. We've got one of the best managers in the world. Let's try and keep everyone happy. And the board just don't seem to be able to do that.
It's a tough one for them, and I love this approach as well from Poch, of really talking Bayern Munich up, going, Bayern Munich, they're a class team. That Coutinho, have you seen him? He's very good. Lewandowski, he's not bad. Now, is he doing that out of genuine respect, or is this a classic tactic? He's trying to cover his own back in advance so that if they get battered by Bayern Munich, all he has to say is, I told you so.
I think it is. When you're a team and you got true belief in yourself and you can go out there and do a job. Yeah, you talk the opposition up a bit and say, look, but when you actually look in his eyes, you can see that he's truly thinking that. I think he thinks actually if Bayern Munich do click, we could be in some trouble here. We're not going out there as European finalists from last season. We're out there trying to get a result and crossing our fingers and hoping for the best, which, as a Tottenham supporter, you don't really want that. You want to be, you're up there against the best, going against the best, thinking we can win this.
But are Tottenham the best? Are they in that club for you?
No, they're not. They're not. Last year they were lucky to get to the final, like Liverpool was, but Liverpool's got that class, they've got that steel. They showed that in the Premiership, how they can withstand that right to the end of the season. So for me, Tottenham just don't look like a force. They don't look like a team that can go out there and really produce every week at the moment, and that's what they need. And once again, when you look at Poch, the manager, he just doesn't seem happy. And when you've got that, it just goes throughout the whole squad. So I hope they prove me wrong, because I want him in the Premiership as a manager. I think he's there and he's shown what you can do as a great manager with not much money. They've created this amazing stadium. This theatre for football. People can go there. They had a team that could turn up and win every week, really, at home. But that's just starting to dwindle a little bit now, and they've got to put reinforcements. And like I said, I think they've got to really show Harry Kane and the other top players there, actually we are going to bring reinforcements in. We want this club to be a top 4 club, and that's what we're going to do. And it's, it just doesn't look like they're going to do that.
Tough times at Tottenham Hotspur, tough times at Manchester United as well. And United legend Peter Schmeichel has described Paul Pogba as the problem child at Old Trafford after last night's draw with Arsenal. Do you think that's fair, Steve?
I do. I said it earlier. I'm glad Peter Schmeichel backed me up on that one. But no. I definitely think that. I think he's a player that's his ego's too big for the club now. It's not his ability that's too big for the club; it's his ego. And he's a player. He reminds me a bit like Anelka. Remember, Anelka used to be a great player, but then suddenly he'd have a good season or season and a half, and then suddenly his form would drop. Suddenly it was transfer window coming soon. Oh, I better start playing well. And then suddenly he'd move to another club. And I think Pogba wants that. He wants the money. He wants the big sort of reputation as such. But he doesn't want to get down and dirty every week. And it's such a frustration when he's he was at one time the most expensive player on the planet, and suddenly his performances are average. You think to yourself, how on earth? I still can't believe he got in the Premiership Team of the Year last year. How on earth can you put him in there? For a couple of appearances in the Premiership, it's all about the longevity of the whole season, who's really gone out there and performed. Everyone knows he can be a world-class player, but to me, a true club player and a true world-class player does it week in, week out.
I think you're spot on, but in terms of whether he's good enough for Manchester United, is it maybe the case that in the modern game, it's not about being good enough for the club, it's about being big enough, marketable enough, popular enough for the club? In that sense, Pogba's arguably bigger than United. He's got more Instagram followers. For that reason, might they hang on to him for the marketability, even if his performances in central midfield aren't up to much?
Well, no, I don't think they can, because I know you're saying that bums on seats, yeah, but how much of the revenue comes from the bums on seats?
It's not just the bums on seats; it's the selling the shirts and all of that.
It is selling the shirts, but people want winner shirts. So you're going to have some supporters that are sort of going around and they follow the best teams, and as much as you say, people don't do that, they do. So yeah, you look at it and no one wants to follow a team that's losing or a fallen giant as such, and you look at Man United at the moment, they are falling quite rapidly. And they're losing their identity as a team, and they need their big players to actually put their hand up and do it. And he's not doing it. And I'd much rather, as a true supporter, I'm not a true supporter, but in my team that I'm watching, I'd much rather have a player giving 100% for the club than a star. You think he might turn it on this week or he might not. When your backs are against the wall, you want players out there that want to play for the club.
Well, look at it last night on exactly that point. Who was it who scored the goal for United? It wasn't the glamorous World Cup winner in Paul Pogba. It was the homegrown, unfancy Scottish lad, Scott McTominay, who actually is not going to end his career as a great of football. He's not going to end his career as a particularly marketable poster boy for anything. But as you say, when the chips are down, he works very, very hard. We're looking ahead, of course, to the Champions League tonight, but we're also looking ahead to the Championship. We've got some big games going on, not least Stoke hosting Huddersfield. Both clubs are without a win so far this year, and we'll be speaking to former Terriers manager Peter Jackson next.
Love sport. You all right, mate? Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah? Really? It's just, there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it. Sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
Can you save money on your energy bills? Tony did, with help from spokesmansaid.com. Getting people real savings.
I'm Tony from Northampton. My bills for gas and electricity had gone straight through the roof. I chose a Spokesman Said, and they saved me £2,800. It was so easy, I used them for my house and contents insurance too.
For help saving money on your energy bills, go to spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money. If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Tops. Visit wedooh.com. We Do, the smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
Oh, it's okay. Let's face it, when your kids are ill, you'd do anything to help them feel better. But remember, antibiotics aren't always needed. You might not realise it, but taking antibiotics when you don't need them puts you and your family at risk of a longer and more severe illness. Help keep your family well. Always take your doctor's advice on antibiotics. Search NHS antibiotics. All better.
This is Love Sport.
Now, Steve, I know you're a Norwich fan, and so whilst you're enjoying a spell with the big boys at the moment, Teemu Pukki scoring freely, you do know the Championship quite well. You know what it's like to get relegated down there, and you know how hard it is to come up again. We're talking a lot about Huddersfield, who were booted out of the Premier League last year and are now struggling down at the bottom of the Championship. How easy do you think it is for a club to get consecutive relegations?
I think it's really easy. It's you've got to start looking at the players you've got in your squad, and some of these teams that go up to the Premiership and start spending big, and you lose that sort of way you play, that teamship, the work for each other. So when you go up to the Premiership, Norwich this year spent nothing really.
750k on Sam Byram.
And they're putting some good performances in though. They're going in there, they're playing some good football. With Pukki there up front. That's what they lacked before, was someone that could get goals for them. So that, they've strengthened that there. He was a complete star buy when you see how much they brought him for. But someone like Huddersfield, they're up there. They played so well in the Premiership at times. And then suddenly it must be a massive anticlimax to come back. But then that's where you need the Championship players. I remember in the old days, Earnshaw up front. He used to score goals for fun in the Championship. And then suddenly he'd go up to the Premiership, couldn't score at all. So suddenly the Championship goes, do you know what, I want to get up there. And it's all about knowing the league and going down there. And, you can't play Premiership football in the Championship at times. You can't do it. You've got to go there, and it is a slog. So sometimes, the players have really got to... I think they've got enough class in Huddersfield to actually go, let's take this, we'll pull it back together, and then we'll try, and hopefully you'll see them do a late surge in this league. A number of times you see teams go down and not come straight back up. It's that 1 year of just getting to grips with it, and then suddenly playing the Championship way to get back out there the season after.
Well, I think for Huddersfield, there's an element of they never expected to get there. They squeaked through the playoffs, having squeaked into the playoffs. And with respect, I loved watching them when they're in the Premier League. I like watching them in the Championship, even though it's not been straightforward this year. They aren't one of these clubs who gets relegated and expects to come back up, because they simply weren't there before. I'm interested by your comments about Norwich not spending very much money, because I agree they've done an amazing job and they're playing very, very well without doing so. But is it fair to say they're a bit of an anomaly in being able to do that? Because I looked at Norwich, and I'm happy to admit now that I was completely wrong, but I looked at the squad they came up with. I looked at that transfer business, which, as I say, in terms of expenditure, was just 750k on a failed right-back from West Ham. And I thought, you are brave, lads. Good luck to you, because it's going to be a long year. It could still be a long year. But the average team can't come up from the Championship, spend no money and beat Man City, surely.
Well, they can't. And, you look at the way they played. Norwich last year threw a few games away in the Championship because they played good football. They tried to play out from the back, whereas, in the Championship, it's all hitting, everyone's running around. It's sort of over-paced stuff, where the Premiership's a little bit more. So the manager, he really built for the Premiership. He had the belief that they could do it. They came through at the end. They threw a lot of results away. But, I was there. I went to the Liverpool match, first game of the season. And, we played some good football at times, but we were totally outclassed. And Liverpool just scored, 4 goals. It was like, oh, this is frightening. Is this the way it's going to be? Are we just that far off that we are going to try and play football, which actually opens ourselves up, but then prove that they can beat the best? But as a club, we've got complete, faith in the board, complete faith in the manager. The players adore the manager. So you can see that, we are going to get some good results. Will we stay up? I'm not sure, if I'm brutally honest, and it's horrible to say that. I'm not sure, but as a club and as a city, we know exactly what we are. We go out there. We're not going to bankrupt the club. We haven't got massive money. So if we have a good time in the Premiership for a year, 2 years, we come back down, we'll just go back together again, and then we'll win a lot more games in the Championship. Then we'll go back up to the Premiership. And if we're a yo-yo club, that's what we are. But we'll have a good time doing it.
Well, it's an exciting time to be a Norwich fan. If only the same could be said for Huddersfield. 9 games into the Championship season, they've picked up just 2 points. They've brought in new managers in the Cowley brothers, 1 point from 3 games. They are very highly rated and they're going to need time. But can the Terriers do it? We are joined on the line by Peter Jackson, who's former Huddersfield player and manager. Good afternoon, Peter. How worried are you for your former club?
Good afternoon. Slightly worried, but I think they've got the right manager, appointed the right manager. And talking to people behind the staff, a few players, it made a real big impression on the club. Behind the scenes, he speaks to staff. He had a meeting with the staff and the caterers and bar people. Everybody connected at the club behind the scenes. He had a team meeting on the Friday before his first game. So he's made a real big impression on the club. Obviously worried that we've not had a win since February, which is a long, long time. So the due a win. There has been a slight improvement in the performances. But you look at Stoke themselves, and they've got, both clubs have got some excellent players, Premiership players who are playing in the Championship. And I can't understand why both of them, with such strong squads, are struggling.
Well, with that, in tonight's game, if a side wins, is the other team going to be in serious trouble? I mean, if Huddersfield beat Stoke, you'd have thought Nathan Jones will lose his job. And equally, if Stoke beat Huddersfield, the knives aren't going to come out for the Cowley brothers. Obviously, they're so new to the club. Yeah. But is that where the serious concerns will start to build?
For Cowley, it's slightly different. Remember, he's only been in the job 3 or 4 weeks, and you said rightly so before I came on air that managers need time. He was manager of Lincoln. He took over Lincoln from, I think it was Braintree he came from. He took over at Lincoln. There was no pressure on him. He was sat mid-term with Lincoln, and it took 3 transfer windows for the manager Dan to turn. Nearly a year and a half, really. Transfer windows to get the right place.
Oh, I think we're losing Peter there. The point he was making is a very, very good one. It's that the Cowley brothers took over Lincoln when they were a non-league side, not really expected to do anything. Consistent promotions. They got them up to League One. They got them challenging right at the top end of League One, by the way. Had a wonderful cup run in the FA Cup where they took on the likes of Arsenal. So these are guys with pedigree, but you just worry how long they're going to get to turn it round. I think there'll be patience there, but they need to get the points on the board before the damage is done. 2 points from 9 games. Their form in the last 5, 4 losses and a draw. They need to find that formula quickly.
It is. Well, it's how the club look at it. You know, if you take your manager on, for instance, Sam Allardyce, you know that he's going to probably get you points quite quickly, but he's not going to be there for a long time. You know, he's there for a good time, not a long time. He's not going to make a dynasty of your club. You know, you look at these brothers, they look like they can really go in there. They're great, like you said, in the transfer window. They know the way they play. They know the philosophy they want. You know, they've done a bit of a Klopp, really. They've gone in there, gone into the whole of the club by the sounds of it. You know, they win the hearts and minds as such. That hopefully will give them that little bit more time. But then also, they do want everyone single-mindedly on the first team to get better. But they do need to be given the time. You know, you can't just put people in there and change the whole philosophy. You know, last year, Huddersfield, you know, there's nothing worse than bad confidence in players. When you're in the Premiership, getting your backside kicked every week and you're a losing mentality, obviously they've come into the Championship with a losing mentality. Not that they mean to. You know, I know they're professional athletes, but it's actually quite hard to just flip your mind to start winning games. You know, so hopefully they'll go in there and they'll really just turn them around, put the confidence back into the players, and the class will come through.
Steve, I think you're absolutely spot on, and I would say that with Huddersfield, they'd be better off getting relegated to League One with the Cowley brothers and rebuilding than bringing in a Sam Allardyce and staying in the Championship. Guy's pulling a face.
Well,
I genuinely believe
look,
that.
That's quite an interesting little comparison, and I think the point is that were it still to have been, you know, Sivert, for example, in charge at Huddersfield, there
Nice
might have
boy,
been
terrible manager.
Yeah, a possibility that someone like an Allardyce would come in. They're not going to change the Cowley brothers, or you wouldn't have thought they will, having only just brought them in. But I do like that idea. You know, would you swap that for that? You know, the full rebuild or the short-term, well, success, if you can call success, staying in the Championship, having just been relegated from the Premier League last season. I know the stat was that, you know, of the previous 24 teams to be relegated to the Championship, only 2 had earned automatic promotion back to the Premier League. It's so much harder than you think it kind of should be, logically thinking, oh, well, they've been in the Premier League, they should be one of the best teams. It so rarely works out that way.
Just finally on this, spare a thought for Colin Grant, who jumped ship from Charlton Athletic in January, got his big move to Premier League Huddersfield. Well, Huddersfield now 23rd in the Championship. Charlton, who were then in League One, currently 6th in the Championship.
Johnny, you say spare a thought, and look, I'm not having a pop at the guy.
Limited sympathy.
But limited sympathy. Huddersfield was a sinking ship when he joined them in January. He joined them for the money. He joined them for the pay rise.
No, he
and
joined
fair
them
play
to play Premier League football for 6 months.
Well, for half a season, okay, and he did that, and he can say he's done that, I suppose. But yeah, he did it primarily for the money, because otherwise, you know, there was only one reason that you were doing it. Charlton were going up, Huddersfield were going down. Ultimately, you're going to be in the same place in 6 months' time, and so I think he's got to probably have made peace with that decision. But
Charlton weren't definitely going up. I think you're being harsh on Colin Grant.
maybe I'm a little bit harsh, but there we go. That's the way I am. Let's just recap briefly on our top story today. Alberto Salazar, of course, Sir Mo Farah's former coach, has been banned for 4 years for doping violations. And just to give you a quick bit of detail on that, it's basically after a 4-year US anti-doping agency investigation and a court battle behind closed doors. It's all played out in secret. Of course, it's only today that we've learned what the findings have been. He ran the Nike Oregon Project, which was an elite athletics training camp for many years up in Oregon, of course, in the northwest of the States. Mo Farah went there back in around 2010, 2011 and became a vastly improved athlete under the watch of Alberto Salazar. He's been one of the world's leading coaches, but his methods had long been questioned as to whether or not they were legal, and he's now been banned for 4 years. Remember, the allegations first surfaced thanks to a Panorama documentary on the BBC back in 2015, and so Mo was asked about those at the time and asked what his response would be and whether or not he'd question Alberto Salazar about his methods. Here is what he said back then.
He said to me, Mo, I can assure you this, trust me. I've got, these are just allegations, I can prove all this, just wait till it comes out, and it will come out. And I was like, are you sure? And he said, yes. And that's when sort of I just left it, and for me, I just wanted to continue running.
So that was Mo Farah speaking back in 2015. Obviously, all that has changed now. He has been banned for 4 years, Alberto Salazar. You'd be surprised if he worked in athletics again, but you never know. These things do take funny courses of action sometimes. Mo Farah, for what it's worth today, has said, I'm relieved that USADA has, after 4 years, completed their investigation into Alberto Salazar. I left the Nike Oregon Project in 2017, but as I've always said, I have no tolerance for anyone who breaks the rules or crosses a line. A ruling has been made, and I'm glad there has finally been a conclusion. A slightly strange statement, if you ask me. Earlier on, Johnny spoke to Ewan Thomas, of course, Love Sport's very own, who's out in Doha. He spoke to us about Adam Jamili and Dina Asher-Smith as well, obviously. But we also asked him about this ban for Alberto Salazar and the need for clean sport overall. This is what Ewan had to say earlier.
It's a real shame because it just takes the focus away from the positive stories. You know, really, we should be all talking about the Dina Asher-Smiths of this world, or the Karsten Warholms retaining his 400 hurdle world title last night. But unfortunately, the news is about Salazar, and you know, it's not great for the sport. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think the only way forward to clean this sport up is get rid of the rotten apples. And if it's proven he is a rotten apple, then unfortunately it's true, but he needs to be gone.
Well, you've had about as close a personal experience with being undone by doping while as a clean athlete as anyone. You, of course, only got your World Championship gold in 2010, years after you should have had it. So remembering that hurt, remembering that injustice, how important is it that the authorities need to keep chasing after those bad apples?
It's really important. I mean, unfortunately, it brings bad headlines and it brings negativity to the sport when another doper is found. But it has to happen because you don't want people watching your sport and all of a sudden saying, oh, that Dina Asher-Smith, you know, I hope she is a clean athlete. But unfortunately, you'll always have people, because there are bad people within the sport, pointing the finger. So I think it's almost like you need to have a complete clear out. Get rid of all the nonsense, get rid of all the abusers of the rules of this wonderful sport, and focus on the good, clean athletes. Because let's be honest, 99.99% of the athletes are clean, hard-working athletes. But it does only take that sort of 0.01% to give the sport a bad name. We see it in cycling. Unfortunately, we see it in lots of other sports. But people will bend the rules. That's life. You know, there's big money to be made in sport, and unfortunately, people will try and find ways around the test methods and so forth to gain that advantage. But I think it is a good thing, although it's negative at the moment. Looking forward to the future, it's a good thing that drugs cheats are caught and kicked out of the sport.
Ewan Thomas there, speaking to us earlier about Alberto Salazar's 4-year ban. We'll be speaking about that with Matt Lawton from The Times after 5 and finding out what impact the ban will have on Nike with sports marketing expert Tim Crow later on too. We'll have a bit of cricket for you next.
Love Sport Radio, the station giving fans a voice.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it, sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
I'm Leslie from North Essex. I couldn't believe that after 5 minutes I'd saved over £900 on my energy bills. When my car insurance was then due for renewal, I went back to a spokesman said and reduced my premium by over £500. I thought that my home insurance was expensive. When I shopped around on a spokesman said, I saved a staggering £1,100. I've saved £2,500. I cannot believe it was that easy.
A spokesmansaid.com, fighting for you, saving you money. If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do, the smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. This means that travelling to the EU will change. You'll need to check online if your passport is valid for travel to Europe. If you're planning on driving, you'll need to check if you have the right documents to drive. And make sure your travel insurance covers all your healthcare needs. To keep your trip on track, check what you need to do at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
I believe in traditional marriage. I've had 3 of them.
Love Sport.
It's the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. Johnny Burrow, Guy Watts and special guest and 2003 Rugby World Cup winner Steve Thompson with you till 7. And Guy, there's been a big piece of rugby cricket news. I'm getting overexcited.
That was the key
Steve,
word, Johnny, the key word.
Cricket news. What is it?
Yeah, plenty of Rugby World Cup chat on the show today, of course, with Steve here. But I know he's got a view on this one too. The story is today, it's an exclusive in the Daily Mail, that Gary Kirsten, who really is a South African legend, a South African cricketing legend, but has had a pretty esteemed career as a coach in the years since he's retired, is not only the favourite with Ashley Giles, who's going to make the ultimate decision to be the next England coach. He's actually flying in today for a job interview tomorrow. This appointment could be made by the end of the week. It seems that Kirsten's been identified as the top target, and that Ashley Giles wants to speak to him, interview him, obviously, and make sure that he still thinks he's the right man. But that if he does, it could all be in place as early as the end of the week, certainly by next week, a quick appointment to be made. He'd start for the tour of his native South Africa later in that starts on Boxing Day, the first test there. This is a guy, in short, who won the World Cup with India in 2011, and just over a year later was taking South Africa to the top of the test rankings when they beat England in our own backyard, of course, here in 2012. So ticks all the boxes as far as I'm concerned. He's probably the leading candidate out there. Steve.
Yeah, sounds like quality appointment, Steve.
Except for he's not English. It just annoys me a bit. Like how, same in the rugby, same in the cricket. How is it? It's like the sport that we've been involved in for so long. How is there not a pathway to bring coaches through? Why is there such a lack of English? Don't get me wrong, bring him in as a technical advisor, things like that, but surely the head man of cricket and rugby should be English.
So is that one of the reasons, in short, you object to Eddie Jones as well?
Yeah, definitely. Don't get me wrong, if they're technically brilliant, bring him in underneath, but surely the main person, the main focus, you're not a club team, you're a country team. When he's standing there going, come on lads, World Cup final, you're there, you're going down to the last wicket, suddenly you're in there, you've got the batsman out there, come on, do this for England. With a South African accent. Don't sound right, does it?
You don't think it could have the same effect? You don't think Eddie Jones could have inspired you in a way that Sir Clive Woodward might have?
Well, I think you're probably right that he couldn't, but isn't it the players' responsibility to motivate each other about their Englishness, about their patriotism on the pitch?
No, I still think you should have the head man. You still have the top dog, your top man that you look at and go, yeah, this is why, you just typifies it. You've got your captain, you've got your coach, technical advisors around there as well. You can have a laugh with, but suddenly your main man should, I think, come from that country.
It's interesting, and there is a debate about English cricket coaches at the moment because we've got the 100 starting next year, and the 100 starts in a real sense on Thursday when the England centrally contracted players are distributed to the different franchises. It's all a bit complicated. We haven't really known cricket being quite like it before, although what I am pleased to say is that we're hopefully going to speak to Owen Morgan, of course, the England World Cup winning captain, here on the show on Thursday afternoon, which should be great. But he's going to be one of the players sort of assigned to a 100 team. He's signed up for it. So Steve Smith and other players like that, some really big global names, Chris Gale as well. Really exciting, but none of the men's franchises are going to be coached by an English person. And it does seem, it's something that I think a lot of journalists and fans alike are quite uncomfortable with, because this is England's big sort of launch into the future, it's big new initiative to get youngsters on side. And it's also about obviously engaging the players and the coaches as well, but none of the head coaches for the men's franchises are English. And people are just saying it's a really bad look, for the English new competition to not have any English coaches. Looks bad, and I completely agree with that, but I do think that when you're choosing the coach for the national team, whether it's the football, rugby or cricket team, it is about choosing the best candidate, because ultimately the results of that team is what potentially inspires the youngsters to get involved, people to take up the sport, carry on with the sport. And so I would rather have a foreigner, an Australian coaching the rugby team, a Zimbabwean, as Andy Flower did for many years, coaching the cricket team, if that means that the team does well, and then in turn the sport becomes more popular. Do you see what I mean? I'd rather not risk there being an English person who's there because he's English and that's good, but who then doesn't get as good results.
My problem is the English aren't good enough. That's what I'm more worried about. We've had success, World Cup in rugby. We had the Englishman there. With the cricket, wasn't coached by an Englishman, but there should be a pathway of English coaches coming through. There's such a lack of English coaches, in rugby, in cricket. Even in football, really, when you actually look at it, so you got this 100 competition, you got Steve Smith, you got these players. It's a new concept. Would you not, there's not relegation and there's not all that to it. Would you not put some young English coaches in there, like earmark them and go, you're going to work with Steve Smith? And the whole point is, this is a new game. It's coming out. As an experienced player, we want you to put back into the game in the England, because you're getting paid by it. Try and help us, and then that's what you should do. That's not my personal opinion.
I would agree with that one, because I think that is central to the ECB's hopes of growing the game in England. And the reason the coaches that are coming in is because they have had success around the world in the other franchise formats like the IPL and the Big Bash, but they only got given the chance because, or they are only now established because they were given a chance many years ago, and the likes of, Stephen Fleming or Jai Wardner or big kind of global names, Shane Warne, they were all given the chance, when they were young coaches as well. So why shouldn't we do the same here? I completely agree, but they've become so obsessed with getting the kind of big glitzy, starry names involved that I think that's slightly gone out of the window. Gary Kirsten, it's not a done deal yet by any means, but he would bring an exceptional CV. But I agree, it's a little bit worrying that there isn't a standout English candidate either for the test team or for 100 franchise. It is a bit of a worrying sort of indictment of the coaching standards and levels of English coaches.
But more broadly, when we're talking about these starry foreign names, surely we need to judge the individuals and not the nationalities. Fabio Capello, for the football team, was quite blatantly, with the benefit of hindsight, a terrible appointment. But the things that made him so unsuccessful weren't actually to do with the fact that he was Italian, I don't think. It wasn't communication problems.
Mind you, he could barely speak English, which
Yeah,
must
so it
actually make things very difficult.
But it was more the fact that he hated wives, hated girlfriends, hated ketchup.
Hated fun.
He was hated fun. He was unpopular for reasons other than linguistics.
Yeah. And actually, on that linguistics note, though, we talk a lot about Emery, don't we? We sort of joke a little about
Good evening,
and all the rest of it. And there are stories, some of which he has to deny, that players don't fully understand his instructions. It would make it so much harder, wouldn't it, if there wasn't that clear, whether it's Capello with the England team or Emery with Arsenal, it must make it so much harder as a player. It's so important, isn't it, now, especially with the minute details being more important than ever, to know exactly what a coach is trying to tell you. It staggers me a little bit that, someone like Emery hasn't had to improve his English more, now that he's been in England for more than a year. How is it still so poor? That's what I find surprising, because it's so important, isn't it?
I think when you get the clubs where they do bring in foreign players and the players that really settle well, or the managers that settle well, learn the language. When I went to France, I didn't speak a word of French, but when I got there, I had to learn. And don't get me wrong, I'm not the best at English, so imagine what my French is like. But you give it a go. When
Yeah.
you're on the pitch, it's bizarre how I'd have an English speaker on my outside, and I'd speak English to him. Then the French person just standing inside me, and I'd speak French to them. Just the odd words and stuff like that. But the whole point is you buy into the culture. That's surely the whole reason of going to a country is you experience the culture.
And did your enjoyment and performances improve, do you think, as you learn more of the language?
Yeah, definitely. You know, and you really buy into it and you like it, and that's the the whole point of it. And but club size are one thing, but I think the national teams, you really look at it and you think, look at Ramsey going to Juventus. His first interview was done in Italian. It might have been a little bit of pidgin Italian, but it was good. He's there, he's trying. Straight away, you've got the supporters buying into you. That gives you that extra bit of time going, hang on a minute, he's going to buy into this. All the digs and that's been at Bale, at Rail is, he's not trying to speak Spanish. He's not trying to buy into this. He's not trying to buy into that. His performance on the pitch at times have been brilliant. But, he just hasn't seemed to have brought into the whole thing about it, and that's what I think you need to do.
Absolutely spot on. And with him, it's not just the language, it's the not going for the team dinner because the Spaniards eat too late. And we can contrast him against Kieran Trippier, who's gone to Atletico, and what's he done? He's got Spanish lessons 5 times a week because he, like you, Steve, has worked out the right way of doing it.
This is Love Sport.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it, sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
Are you paying way too much for your energy bills? A spokesman said could help you save big money. With electricity costs continuing to rise, you could save hundreds of pounds by shopping around. Just go to aspokesmansaid.com and look for the very best value energy deals on the market. Don't waste your hard-earned cash. You could be on a much cheaper deal. Go to aspokesmansaid.com.
Fighting for you, saving you money.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
Before you set off on a long journey, remember to check your vehicle. Are your tyres correctly inflated? And are the treads deep enough? Have you got enough fuel? Is your oil level right? Checking your vehicle doesn't take long, but can prevent a breakdown or accident and save you money. So, before you set off on a long journey, check your tyres, fuel and oil. Highways England, connecting the country.
Well, on Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive, we're continuing to get our teeth into our top story today. Alberto Salazar, the former coach of Sir Mo Farah, has been given a 4-year ban for doping violation. What does that mean for Mo? There are no allegations against him. He's never failed a drugs test, but you'd have to say it's not a good look. We're also going to be talking to Sammy McIlroy, the former Manchester United midfielder, getting his take on last night's draw with Arsenal and the state of play at the club. Their worst start to a Premier League season for 30 years. Is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer doomed? But first, news.
On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is Love Sport News.
From the Sky News Centre at 5. The Home Secretary will allow 60% of police officers to have tasers if their Chief Constable wants them to. Priti Patel's told the Conservative Party conference it'll help keep them and the public in England and Wales safe. She's also planning to spend £20 million on tackling county lines drug dealing, saying it's a huge problem for communities.
I'm announcing a £20 million package to roll up county lines drugs gangs, to stop them from terrorising our towns and our villages and exploiting our children.
Boris Johnson insists he's making concessions during his Brexit negotiations with the EU. The arrangements over the Irish border remain the big sticking point in withdrawal talks. Meanwhile, the PM's dodged a question on whether he had an affair with a businesswoman linked to misconduct allegations against him when he was London mayor. The PM was asked about it by our political editor Beth Rigby.
To promote the city abroad,
on that, Prime Minister, and I wouldn't ask
on
unless
the
it
question
had
you asked, I
become a
never
matter of
comment on that
public-
kind of thing because.
So you're not denying that you were having an affair with her?
The crucial thing is that in terms of promoting London, everything was done with complete propriety.
One of Britain's most wanted men has been convicted of murder after slashing a man's neck in a bar. Shane O'Brien attacked Josh Hanson in West London in 2015. There's been more violence in Hong Kong, where a protester's been shot by police at close range. It's the first time any demonstrator has been hit by a live round since mass demonstrations broke out in June. Researchers say cutting back on red and processed meat apparently has few, if any, health benefits. The findings contradict dietary advice, which recommends limiting our daily amounts to the equivalent of 2 rashers of bacon. And Banksy's opened his own homeware store in South London. The graffiti artist says it's following a legal dispute with a greeting cards company which is contesting the trademark he holds. That's the latest. I'm Tanya Snuggs.
Love Sport Radio, on digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive.
Good evening. You are listening to the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. You're with me, Johnny Burrow, Guy Watts, and special guest and 2003 Rugby World Cup winner Steve Thompson until 7. Our top story this evening, Alberto Salazar, the former coach of Sir Mo Farah, has been given a 4-year ban from athletics for doping violations. A bit of background for you here. Salazar ran the Nike Oregon project, which Farah trained with from 2011 to 2017, and he's been found guilty of various doping offences, largely linked to, this is Salazar, I should stress, not Mo Farah, who is unaccused of anything and has never failed a drugs test. Salazar has been found guilty of offences relating to the trafficking and use of testosterone, but it has to be said, some of the things he was getting up to were legal, if a little bit blurred along that line. Thyroid medication, for example, for athletes without a thyroid problem. Asthma medication for athletes without asthma. The question now for Sir Mo is how this looks, because, as I say, no allegations against him, never failed a drugs test, no indication that he's not clean, but when you look at the results, the improvements he achieved under a coach who has now been found to be doping, questions will be asked. Within 7 months of Farah's move to the US, he'd taken almost 45 seconds off his personal best for the 10,000 metres and upgraded 7th place at the 2009 World Championships into 5,000 metre gold at the Worlds in 2011. Salazar guided Farah to 4 Olympic golds and 10 straight global titles, at the point where Sir Mo is an icon of British sport, a national treasure. We've really got to hope that he is as clean can be. We're going to be talking to Matt Lawton, chief sports reporter at The Times, later on, who is a big part of this Salazar investigation. But earlier on, we were joined by leading sports scientist Ross Tucker to find out a bit more about why Alberto Salazar was using the illegal substances and methods he's been found guilty of employing. We'll play you that interview in full now. We started by asking him what the advantage is to using testosterone on long-distance athletes.
So in the world that Salazar inhabits, which is distance runners, it's a little bit different from what people may have heard of before, because testosterone is one of the anabolic steroids, which most people would think is synonymous with, say, 100-meter sprinters or powerlifters, bodybuilders. But a distance runner also gets benefit because the drug would help them recover. And so the main challenge, obviously, for a long-distance runner is, can you do the volume and the intensity of training that's required in order to achieve performance, but also stay beneath some physiological ceiling at which your body starts to break down. So a lot of endurance athletes have used testosterone to help them improve their recovery, and that allows them to train harder, say 5 or 6 days a week instead of 4, and that obviously has benefits for performance.
And of course, there are no allegations against Sir Mo Farah, no reason to believe that he's done anything illegal, but we do know he took an infusion of L-carnitine before the 2014 London Marathon. Tell us a little bit about that substance. What is it primarily used for?
So L-carnitine is an interesting one because it's available as a supplement. Any one of your listeners could walk into a supplement shop or a pharmacy and they'd be able to walk out with it in tablet form. And the theory has long been that if you take L-carnitine, it'll improve performance because it's involved in fat metabolism. Now, I'm not going to go into the specific biochemistry of that now, but
you'd lose me quite quickly.
Sorry?
You'd lose me quite quickly if you did.
Yeah, I may get lost myself. So L-carnitine is a substance it functions in the metabolism of fat in the body. And so again, for an endurance athlete, if you can improve how well that person uses fat, then performance stands to improve. The trouble, as is reported in this report that's come out overnight, is that Salazar was impatient to use the supplement that's available commercially because it takes a long time, in theory, to have benefits and may not even help at all. And so what he then is alleged to have done, and found guilty of doing, is infusing it. And the problem there is that the anti-doping agencies only allow you to infuse certain volumes over certain time periods. Otherwise, it becomes a doping offense. So in that instance, the transgression is less about the L-carnitine and more about the fact that he's infusing it. And one of the first revelations that triggered all this is one of his former coaches accused him of using him effectively as a guinea pig. And they would pump this guy full of a liter full of this L-carnitine stuff. And they even were in contact with Lance Armstrong saying that when you do that, when you put a liter of L-carnitine into a person within an hour or 4 hours, they say the effects are miraculous, unbelievable benefits. And so that's then what he is alleged to have done with other athletes. As you mentioned in asking the question, none of it has stuck to any of the big name athletes.
It does sound to the non-expert ear that there is an element of the Dr. Frankensteins about this, frankly, the kind of looking at what can be done with the human body, how much L-carnitine can you use, for example. I know that the limit is supposedly 60 millilitres every 6 hours. He was upping it in the case of that particular experiment to once an hour. And it all sounds rather ominous. Can any of the things that he's said to have done be dangerous for the athletes taking them? Was he actually putting these people at risk?
I honestly don't know. The default is to say yes, of course, because when you infuse a drug at those dosages and you don't know, not necessarily even a drug, even a substance like L-carnitine, and you don't know what the potential consequences are, then you are taking risks. But as you said in asking it, there's really an element, two things jump out. One is that they are very meticulous and careful about seeing how much can we get away with. You know, the testosterone stuff, he in his defense, he argued that he wanted to test how much testosterone it would take to trigger a positive because he says they were scared of sabotage. Now, that's to me ridiculous because even if you could confirm in your own experiments how much testosterone it would take before you fail the test, that's not going to help you in the case of someone sabotaging you. It's a theoretical argument. It's useless to him. The other thing they're doing is they're trying to figure out what works. And so the combination of trying to figure out what works and what we can get away with is very nefarious and malicious sounding. It really does sound like that. And they were taking risks with athletes' health. The allegations include that he would tell athletes to take thyroid hormones, for instance. Now, those are very powerful drugs that are normally given by a doctor under prescription for people who very importantly need them. Salazar was playing doctor with people who didn't even need them. And of course, there have to be consequences to that. So the things that he's alleged to have done are very serious. And they're serious because they are, effectively, you've got a coach who is playing doctor with healthy athletes and turning them into patients for the sake of performance.
Well, the thing is as well, when you look at it, it's all about winning, isn't it? As soon as you get medals or you get money up there, you're always going to get certain athletes that will go, I need this. This is what I need to do. And you'll always get your mad scientists that are always looking at, like you said, they might not be looking at them as a human being. They're there as a new Formula One car that they can tinker with to try and get them to the best and just to push those boundaries. And, I can never actually see this stopping moving forwards.
No, it's not going to, and that's the depressing reality because so many of the things that are used nowadays are not even testable. So they will rationalize it to themselves and say, we're not cheating because if we got caught with this, it's not even an offense. Thyroid hormone, for instance, the one that he was giving the athletes, is not banned. It's grossly unethical and it is cheating, but it's not illegal. So that's the world that we live in now, is that especially when you consider that we know other athletes are doping. You look at the drip feed, one after the next, of positive tests coming out. So you're an elite athlete and you're saying, I don't want to be left behind. There's a way that I can keep up. I've got a compliant doctor and I've got a compliant coach. And that's what this decision has revealed, is there's a partnership between a coach and a doctor, and they are willing to do what it takes to make the athlete go faster. Now you have to interpret that. You interpret every other performance against that background now.
I could always remember sitting down with the lads when we were just having time, having a coffee and things like that, and we'd always talk about, the drugs in sport and athletics and stuff. And the one thing we always came up with, well, people are always going to do it. It's like the Tour de France. People are always going to do it. Why don't we do a natural one and then a drug Olympics? So people can get it out there and go, right, yep, I just want to push my body. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get there. And others to say, I don't believe in that. Let's just go there and natural. I know people talk about sponsorship and things like that, but surely that would get rid of it as well.
Well, if there was a World Cup on the go right now for definitely clean athletes and definitely doped athletes, which one do you think people would watch?
Well, it's hard to say, because sometimes when you do see it, you're a bit like, you do want to see the natural athletes, what the body can do, but then also there is that point of, actually, how fast can someone run? It doesn't matter what they put inside them. Let's just see how fast they can run or how high they can jump and things like that. But people are starting to get a little bit sick of it as well. I think of people doping and people pushing the boundaries and going a little bit too far.
Yeah, so I guess two things. One is there space in the calendar for 2 events? Imagine 2 of everything. And then the second thing is, if you could guarantee that the earnings, the prize money, this prestige was the same in both, how would you stop people coming from the dirty one into the clean one? Because the incentive would not change. It would still be there. Because I could earn the same. I could earn the same through less training because I'm a cheat than I would have to. I could compete against lesser athletes because they're not doping. So what would stop me? So I'm not sure that it would change all that much. And ultimately, the problem is that if you took anti-doping away, then the ceiling that exists would be non-existent. And the only deterrent to how much drugs or how many drugs an athlete would take would be how willing they are to risk their health. And so young 15, 16-year-old boys playing rugby or wanting to become track and field athletes or Olympic champions would effectively have to choose to either take drugs or stop.
Yeah.
And that's the reason that anti-doping has to exist, because you give someone effectively what we call a Hobson's choice.
That was leading sports scientist Ross Tucker speaking to us earlier on. Matt Lawson from The Times will join us just after 5:30 as well to give us his thoughts on this. A quick reminder of Mo Farah's statement. He's given one today in response to USADA. It is USADA, isn't it, Guy? I keep thinking I should be doing an acronym, but it's USADA.
USADA, I think, it's one of those where they've tried to deliberately make it
like a word.
A word, yeah,
I'll
rather
tell
than...
you what, we will indulge them. And Mo Farah has done just that. He said, I'm relieved that USADA has, after 4 years, completed their investigation into Alberto Salazar. I left the Nike Oregon project in 2017, but as I've always said, I have no tolerance for anyone who breaks the rules or crosses a line. A ruling has been made, and I'm glad there has finally been a conclusion. Mo, you can use the word conclusion all you like, but unfortunately, mate, that is not going to be the end of it.
It's just not going to be the end, is it? It's in a way just the beginning, and I think that if he doesn't realise that, he's maybe more naive than he's appeared to be in the past. Remember in 2015 when the allegations were first made, he accused the media of dragging his name through the mud. The allegations were, of course, about Alberto Salazar. They always have been. But the point is, by being associated with him, Mo Farah wasn't having his name dragged through the mud. He was choosing to associate with a guy who was controversial at best, and it's now been proven was using illegal methods to dope his athletes. So, yeah, it's a massive, massive story, this one. And I personally have 2 main questions. I want to ask Mo Farah, why did you stand by him back in 2015? We heard him earlier talking back in 2015, saying that he'd been assured by Alberto Salazar. Was that enough? Should that have been enough for him? Should he have been asking more difficult questions? Perhaps he should have. And then he left, of course, the Nike Oregon project in 2017, just after he'd switched to marathon running. Alberto Salazar was a brilliant marathon runner himself. It seemed a strange time to leave, and it turned out it was just months after charges were brought against Alberto Salazar and the Nike Oregon project by USADA. And I want to ask as well, the UK athletics group as well, why did they allow Farah to stand by such a controversial coach? Why did Neil Black, the director of performance, describe him, Alberto Salazar, as a genius? It's not a good look now. They could have, I think, been a little bit more circumspect with the language they used to say at the very least. But yeah, as you say, Johnny, we've got more guests coming up to talk about this with us later. We've got Sammy McIlroy, the former Man United midfielder, as well, coming up very shortly to talk about what was, let's be honest, a pretty mediocre game at Old Trafford last night.
I have a strong connection with Scotland. I believe my tan shade is iron blue.
This is Love Sport.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. This means that travelling to the EU will change. You'll need to check online if your passport is valid for travel to Europe. If you're planning on driving, you'll need to check if you have the right documents to drive. And make sure your travel insurance covers all your healthcare needs. To keep your trip on track, check what you need to do at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
Home insurance is vital. You don't want to end up paying through the nose when something goes wrong. But are you being charged way too much for your home cover? Are your insurance premiums simply too much to bear? It doesn't have to be that way. A spokesmansaid.com is a price comparison website that trawls the internet to find the best deal for you. Don't pay the price for not shopping around. Visit a spokesmansaid.com and start saving today.
A spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
If you fall asleep at the wheel, you'll put your life in danger, and the lives of others as well. Before you feel tired, pull off the road into a services or other safe area. Drink some strong coffee, and take a quick nap while the caffeine kicks in.
If you're having a nap, you've left your lights on, sir.
Right, cheers.
Think. Don't drive tired.
Love Sport.
Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. Johnny Burrow and Guy Watts, joined by special guest and Rugby World Cup winner Steve Thompson. We're with you till 7, and we are joined on the line by Sammy McIlroy, former Manchester United midfielder. Evening, Sammy. Thank you for joining us. I know you were at the game last night at Old Trafford. Were there any signs of encouragement?
Well, obviously, things aren't going according to plan for Ollie at the minute. We're having a little bit of a goal shortage as well, but it's always a tough game against Arsenal. They're trying to get their team together under their new manager, and it was one of those games where mistakes were, going to count. And when we went 1-0 up in the first half, just before half-time, I thought second half we might have came out and pressured Arsenal to get the second goal. But that's a problem at the minute. We're not scoring enough goals, and we didn't get that second goal and let Arsenal back into the game.
Does Ollie deserve to be given time, Sammy?
I think so. You can't keep on sacking these managers. I know the pressure in the Premiership now with the big clubs enormous, and the fans. They expect instant success, but I think now the way the team is, it's a very, very young side. I think last night around the squad there was something like seven academy players, on the field and in the squad and stuff like that. So I think now's the time where we back the manager, and then hopefully he'll see it through.
What was the atmosphere like last night at Old Trafford? Do you think the fans are still on side with Ollie?
I think the majority are. Obviously, you're going to get a few in the phone-ins, and you're going to get a few that say things aren't right, things haven't improved since the previous managers and whatever. But I think the majority are sort of sticking with him, and the pressure's on. It's all about results. It's all about trophies at Manchester United, and Ollie knows that. He knows the club inside out. He's been a player He's won trophies. He knows exactly what the fans want. And to be fair, he is trying to do that. He's bought 3 players in there and good players as well. But with these young lads in at the minute, he has to have time.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Sammy, there about the time, because you look back. I know looking back, Ferguson, if he was around nowadays, Man United would never have had that golden era because he'd have been sacked.
Well, yeah, exactly. And this is at that time as well, Steve. That the chairman at the time give Fergie that bit of time, that bit of extra time where Fergie, could change it round, and he did. And look what happened when he did turn it round. He went on to be an absolute unbelievable success. And ever since Ferguson has left the job, the managers have found it very, very hard to sort of get the football. Okay, we've won some trophies. We won the FA Cup of Van Gaal. We won a couple with Mourinho, the Europa League. But it's the football, Steve. It's the football that the fans want to see as well at Manchester United. And unfortunately, over the last few years, it's been, to be honest with you, a little bit dreary.
It's not a quick fix, though, is it? Like they keep saying,
it's not a quick fix.
They've tried to do it in the past, so you've got to back a horse at some stage. And I think Ollie's definitely the man. He's young, and then suddenly give him. It's the amount of money that's in top class football now with the players. You've got to give a manager surely 2-3 windows at least to try and get a squad and a ability and a team belief that believes the same as the manager.
I think your point you made there is with these next couple of transfer windows, I think are going to be very, very important. At the moment, goals are drying up, and there's a little bit of talk flying around that because Lukaku and Sanchez went to Italy, we should have had a replacement. Now then, I think in January, when January comes, the next window, I'm sure Ali will strengthen the attacking situation at United right now. At the minute, with Martial being injured, young Rashford, young Greenwood, a lot of pressure on those kids, and hopefully time will tell that they will be a success at the club. There's no doubt about that. But I just think we need maybe a proven goal scorer up there to help them out.
What is your take on Paul Pogba, Sammy? Because we've had a bit of an argument in the studio this afternoon. I'd be very interested to hear your take. Is he worth all the trouble?
I mean, at the end of the day, he is a footballer, and he is a very, very good footballer. But there's times in the park when you see him and he's doing well, you want to see more. You want to see him more consistent in a game because he's got all the attributes. He can pass it, he can score goals, he's got a half-decent engine where he can get he can get into the box when the ball's out wide, but he doesn't seem to put his sort of stance on the game and say, right, I'm going to control this game. With all his ability, he's a World Cup winner. With all his skill, there's just something missing at the moment where he's definitely not playing 90 minutes for Manchester United, and that's a big disappointment because he's got everything there, but at the minute, he's not doing his best for Manchester United.
Sammy, we heard Roy Keane in typically belligerent style on Sky last night. He was saying top 4 is out of reach for both United and Arsenal. Do you agree with him?
I wouldn't like the agreement because I still think let's be fair, Manchester City, Liverpool, they're going to contest it again. There's no doubt about that. I think there's like 4 or 5 clubs from them that's going to be fighting for those other 2 places. I'd like to think that Manchester United might get there, even though I think it's going to be difficult. And it's going to be difficult for Arsenal as well on what I've seen so far this season. But you look around as well. Tottenham are in and out. Chelsea are sort of like rebuilding. So really those other 2 places, it's just if any team can get consistent results, they're going to be in there.
Sammy, great to talk to you. Thanks for your insight. Sammy McIlroy there, former Manchester United midfielder. He was at the game last night. I think people are writing United off too early, Steve. I think people are writing Arsenal off too early as well. I think top 4 probably is a bridge too far for Ollie's men. But this idea that they're suddenly going to be catapulted down into the bottom half of the table is just histrionics, isn't it?
I think it is. They've still got quality in the team, but like I said, the other teams around them have really come up. And the thing is, when teams play against Man United, they are playing against Manchester United now. It's like an FA Cup final for them every game. So when they're not on the top form, teams are battling all the way to the end. Before, in the old days, Man United would have scored a goal and teams would put their head down. Well, they don't. They're like, hang on a minute, we can still score 2-3 against Man United here. You know, even at Old Trafford, teams are going there and having a sniff of picking up a point, or if not 3 points. You know, it's just unheard of over the last 10, 15 years. So that's what's going up against them at the moment, and they're having to blood a lot of young players in there, and that's why my argument is when you've got a player like Pogba who's supposed to be world class, I can't see him actually teaching any of the youngsters anything out there on the pitch at the moment. If anything, they're looking at him going, come on, mate, you got a Man United shirt on here, put a bit of heart into it and let's get us going. Because, he does it when he wants to, but that's not what he's there for. He's there to lead from the front.
United have scored just 18 goals in the 19 games since Solskjaer took the job. Now, I know this isn't the best squad they've ever had, but with Rashford, with Martial, with, dare I say it, Pogba, that's not good enough. No,
it's nowhere near good enough. They should be scoring a lot more goals than that, and creating some more opportunities. But they are in a rebuilding structure. They are there. Rashford, I think he's a class player, but I think he's running on empty. He's had so much sort of pressure put on him. Really, as a player as young as him, he should be there. With experienced players around him, and he should be going out there worrying about his own performance. He's not. He's out there as one of the sort of experienced players, it seems, with a heart, trying to pull the team along. And that's not what he's there for, really. He's there to go out there, score goals and worry about himself. And for me, it's not happening. It's a whole new rebuilding structure for them. And also, it's just getting back into a winning habit with confidence. And, they haven't got that.
More broadly, Steve, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on VAR, because obviously in rugby we have TMO, which is used so successfully. Have you been a little bit bemused, possibly even amused, by the difficulties that VAR has had so far in football?
Yeah, I am, because I thought it'd be a lot easier in football. I must admit, I did think, because it's so much more open. For this offside, onside, I'd do it from the feet, rather than a hand or something like that being offside, and that's what it looks like they've been going from.
Well, the rule is, I think, anything you can technically score a goal with, so a head or a shoulder or a toe or a knee or whatever it might be.
Well, I think they should just do it from your feet. There's your line. Yeah, if you're leaning over it and your head's over it, that's fine. It should from your feet. Then there's no arguments. It's a lot easier to do. In rugby today, they're looking at bringing Hawkeye in just for the offside. We seem to be really pushing it on there, whereas everyone seems to be fine against it. I must admit, it's quite a hard one last night, because when you see the goal scored for Arsenal, it's a natural reaction of the goalkeeper. As soon as he see the flag up, you see him sort of
switch off,
stutter a bit, like, oh yes, and then suddenly they play through. So that's where he's got to try, and I don't know, I know it's a reaction
for the problem though, right? The first thing you get told, and I've never played any sport at a high level, but the first thing you get told, even in the under 7D team, is you play till the whistle, and if the flag goes up, you still face up to Aubameyang.
You do. This is just early teething problems, when you go. But let's be honest, how on earth that touch judge actually, or the linesman, should we say, got that wrong and put his flag up? I don't know. That's the thing as well. But it's got to be a good thing, because VAR. You look at it. When there's been so many controversial, Republic of Ireland years ago getting knocked out when the ball was out, and things like that. That's massive, economy for the economy of Ireland. If they're going to the World Cup or they're going through, that's massive for a country. There have been some big decisions that are completely wrong, and that's what VAR should be. Yeah, that could be corrected. So there are going to be people that love it and hate it. When it's going for your team, people are happy. When it's not, there are ways. It's still young in football. Rugby now. We're getting a lot more decisions through it. It is slowing the game down a little bit, whereas you could do that on the running football as well and say, look, hang on a minute, come back, he's offside. Just keep playing until, the VAR referees turned around to the actual official on the pitch and said, blow your whistle, actually, there was a free kick back there. There's teething problems, but for me, if you can get honest results and take the mistakes out of it, only the better for the game, really.
Well, we can only hope it'll get there. We do, of course, have Champions League football for you tonight, and in just under half an hour, Real Madrid will kick off against Club Bruges, and Guy Watts can bring us the team news from that fixture.
I can indeed, yeah. One of two early kickoffs in the Champions League tonight, Johnny. The other one, of course, being Atalanta versus Shakhtar. We'll give you score updates on those, of course, all the way up to 7 o'clock. We should have team news for you from Man City and Spurs games tonight as well before the end of the show. It's a little bit later on, but Real's team, here you go. It's a strong one, although there are a couple of notable omissions. Thibaut Courtois in goal, Carvajal, Varane, Ramos, who of course captains the side, and Nacho at the back. You've got Modric, Casemiro and Kroos in midfield. Lucas Vazquez, Benzema and Eden Hazard start up front. Marcelo returns to the bench after being out injured. Areola, Militao, Valverde, Jovic, Isco and Vinicius Jr. also make up the bench. That means, though, no Gareth Bale, no James Rodriguez either, with both players having played a reasonably prominent part in the start of the season, in spite of Zidane having wanted them out in the summer. Interesting to see they are left out tonight. They suffered a 3-0 defeat in their first game. Of course, it's turned around a little bit for them in the league after that defeat to PSG, but Zidane could really do with a victory tonight. But at home to Club Bruges, you'd have thought that they could manage that. We'll have, as I say, updates for you once those games kick off in about 25 minutes' time.
Well, I tell you what, if Zidane can't get a win in that one, he will be in serious trouble. Up next, we're going to be getting the inside line on this Salazar story from Matt Lawton, chief sports correspondent for The Times.
This is Love Sport. Have you had enough of extortionate energy bills? A spokesman said could help you find the cheapest energy deals on the market. Don't take our word for it. There's hundreds of spokesman said customers who've saved big. Brian from Derbyshire saved £400 on his energy bills, and Tony from Northampton saved a massive £2,800 on his gas and electric. A spokesmansaid.com, the leading price comparison site where you can switch to the cheapest energy tariffs on the market in just minutes.
The spokesmansaid.com, fighting for you, saving you money.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just, there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it, sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage.
Tenna men.
Cage.
Pants and pads.
You're
discreet. Masculine.
You're right.
Secure absorption zone. Buy online or in shops.
You're in.
Tenna men. Keep control.
You're in.
No.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Brexit will bring changes that affect businesses in many ways, particularly if you buy from EU suppliers, sell to EU customers, provide services to EU clients, and receive customer data from other businesses in the EU. Businesses need to prepare. Find out how at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
England is the wettest country around, but what do you expect if the Queen's going to reign for so long?
Love Sport. You're listening to the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. Johnny Burrow and Guy Watts, joined by special guest Steve Thompson. We're with you till 7, and Guy Watts has all your latest sporting headlines and...
I do, Johnny. Yeah, the top story this afternoon, of course, just to remind you, it's this 4-year ban from all athletics-related activity for Alberto Salazar, so Mo Farah's former coach, of course. Mo Farah says he has no tolerance for anyone who breaks the rules. Following that ruling, the British Olympic champion attended the Americans coaching camp from 2011 until 2017. Salazar, whose accreditation to the World Championships in Doha has been deactivated, says he's shocked by the verdict and intends to appeal. Farah has never failed a drugs test, remember, and has always denied any wrongdoing. And in some football news for you, Man City will be without Kevin De Bruyne for tonight's Champions League group match against Dinamo Zagreb. The midfielder has been ruled out of the game with a groin injury. Spurs boss Mauricio Pochettino says his side are up against one of the great European clubs when they face Bayern Munich later. The German Giants travel to North London on the back of an 8-match unbeaten run at the start of the new campaign. Both those games kick off at 8 o'clock. Remember, we'll have team news for you from those in just over an hour's time. And Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp says it's unlikely they'll risk the fitness of Alisson before the international break. His first choice goalkeeper has been out of action since picking up a calf injury in their opening Premier League game against Norwich. And in your weather, a cold one tonight, dropping to lows of 7 degrees or so here in London. Could be a little bit of rain around as well, but a bit brighter tomorrow. Only highs of 14 degrees or so, though, so not too warm. This is Love Sport Drive.
It is indeed. And our top story this evening, Alberto Salazar, the famed Nike coach who guided Sir Mo Farah to Olympic glory, has been found guilty of doping violations and banned for 4 years. Nike paid endocrinologist Dr. Jeffrey Brown is also guilty of doping violations and banned for 4 years. Salazar and his prestigious Nike Oregon project has been under investigation by the US anti-doping agency since a BBC Panorama and ProPublica investigation in 2015. The question now from the British point of view is what this means for Sir Mo. There are no allegations against him as yet. He's never failed a drugs test, but to be closely linked, to have your former coach, someone you worked with for 6 years during the very heights of your career, is not a good look. We're joined on the line now by Matt Lawton, Chief Sports Correspondent for The Times. Good evening, Matt. Thanks very much for joining us. You've followed this story, you've been investigating for years now. Is there an element of satisfaction in seeing Salazar found guilty after so many years of suspicion and denial?
If I'm totally honest, there probably is, because sometimes when you're pursuing these stories, it's not a popular road to go down. You do meet resistance. You meet resistance from people in the sport. You even occasionally meet resistance from other journalists. So, there's an element of I told you so in it.
And in terms of the ban itself, what's 4 years as you see it? These are serious offences. Is 4 years long enough?
Well, I think it's a pretty lengthy sanction. After that, you're probably looking at life, really. And I think a 4-year sanction is, it finishes Salazar. His reputation is destroyed, and it also the fact the fallout will be considerable. It's serious enough. The charges or the sanctions, I should say, are serious enough to have considerable fallout, a considerable impact on a lot of people, not just Mo Farah, and I think the impact on him is enormous, but on UK athletics and on Nike.
Well, let's start with Farah. When you're talking about the scale of that impact, what is this going to do for his reputation, and how bad timing is this for athletics as a whole?
I don't think it's bad timing, even though it is during the World Championships, because I kind of feel that athletics had reached such a kind of nadir in the last few years, particularly with all the issues around the Russians and around the people at the top of the IAAF and that ongoing criminal investigation in France. We had a situation where there was absolutely no trust whatsoever in the IAAF because, allegations of athletes failing drugs tests and then being extorted money to make those positives go away. I feel now the sport is in a much better place. The big fish are getting caught and they're getting sanctioned and they're getting banned. And this is one major example. I forget. I can't remember what the other part of your question was.
Well, in terms of Mo Farah's reputation,
and Farah, I think it's very, very damaging for him because at the end of the day, he stood by Alberto Salazar when the evidence that was presented in the first place by BBC Panorama in 2015 was pretty convincing, in my opinion. There were echoes of the Armstrong case because, while they never officially caught Armstrong failing a drugs test, it was the sheer weight of evidence. It was the sheer number of witnesses. And what we had with the Nike Oregon project was a lot of athletes former staff making these claims, and yet Farah chose to stand by Salazar for more than 2 years. And it's very difficult to ignore the fact that that incredible period of success he enjoyed, 10 straight world titles, global titles, I should say, including 4 Olympic gold medals. It all happened under the guidance of a coach who's now been banned for 4 years for anti-doping violations.
Do UK athletics have questions to answer as well?
Massive questions. They stood by him, but the performance director, Neil Black, defended Salazar publicly, called him a genius. Called him a brilliant man. They conducted a review of the Oregon Project's relationship with Farah, which they concluded by September 2015, and said there were no concerns. And you just think, you pillocks. You knew it at the time. You knew it at the time. If you had half a brain as a journalist, you knew it at the time that there was more to this. I flew out. I responded to that original program. My boss at the Daily Mail at the time, I'm obviously at the Times now, but my boss at the Daily Mail, put me on a plane to Oregon, put me on a plane to North Carolina, told me to go and speak to these people. I knew they were credible, just knew it. So for them to just come out in September 2015 and say, nah, nothing to see here, no concerns, was just idiocy at best.
Well, Matt, you've written a brilliant article in the Times today detailing your experiences of flying out there and investigating this story yourself, including an episode where you went to Salazar's house and were confronted by both his wife and an angry Rottweiler. What were those experiences like?
I don't want to get sued by the Rottweiler. He wasn't angry.
Just a Rottweiler.
That would be very unfair on the Rottweiler. No, there was a Rottweiler present, and I have a bit of as a child of the sort of Omen film generation, I have a bit of a phobia about Rottweilers, if I'm honest. No, there was a right. No, to be honest, his wife was probably the more the scarier individual of the three. Salazar didn't actually speak. His wife,
That's quite scary in itself, though, isn't it? When you've got a mad scientist type there just staring at you in silence.
Yeah. Well, it was his wife who just said, "Matt, get off our property."
She knew who you were. That's quite gratifying.
Yeah, well, I had at one point, I had managed to give him my card and speak to her at the door. Alberto wasn't actually there when I arrived. He arrived with the dog after I'd been there a couple of minutes. I assumed that somebody, I think his daughter was there at the time.
There'd been
maybe
the panic
someone
button
called.
Pressed, yeah.
And then, I knocked the door because he wasn't returning any calls, and I was in Portland, and
and you're a journalist, and that is your job. It makes for wonderful reading. If anyone hasn't seen it, track it down. Just finally, Matt, on the Nike front, because it's more complicated than this just being the Nike Oregon Center, and even more complicated than Dr. Brown being Nike paid. There's also the link to UK athletics. They're massively funded by Nike. They've got this current deal which runs until 2030. What are the ramifications for Nike, and is that deal now in jeopardy?
I think it should be because it was bonkers. They renewed that deal in 2017, 2 years after the allegations surfaced, and while a USADA investigation was still ongoing. Into the Nike Oregon project. It wasn't just the Oregon; it was the Nike Oregon project. The whole thing has been bankrolled by Nike, and they renewed the deal. When they couldn't possibly know what the outcome of this investigation was going to be, and they look. That decision looks very, very foolish today.
It does indeed. Matt, fantastic to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time as ever. Matt Lawson there, thanks. Chief Sports Correspondent for The Times. It's an incredible story on almost every level, and I use incredible advisedly in the sense that beyond just being amazing, it is almost hard to believe, almost impossible to believe, that something can have been going on such a grand scale, bankrolled by such a huge company. We don't know whether they knew what was going on, of course, but the trail of money is certainly there. and involving some of the biggest names in sport. And obviously, we don't know whether any of those names are guilty of anything. There are no allegations as things stand directed at the likes of Mo Farah. But it wouldn't be surprising if a few more stories emerged out of this one. We'll be continuing our coverage of the entire Salazar situation throughout this evening's show, and we'll also have updates from this evening's Champions League action, so don't go anywhere.
Giving your team a voice. Love Sport Radio.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it, sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage.
Tenna men.
Cage.
Pants and pads.
You're
discreet. Masculine.
You're
secure absorption zone. Buy online or in shops.
You're
Tenna men. Keep control.
Urine?
No.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
Exercise. It doesn't have to mean Lycra or a fancy gym membership. All you need is 10 minutes and you. Because a regular 10-minute brisk walk is a great way to get more active. Whether that's walking to the shops or getting off the bus a stop early. Picking up the pace and getting your heart pumping can make a real difference to your health. So, to see how much brisk walking you're doing and how you can fit more into your day, download the free Active 10 app, because there's only one you.
This is Love Sport.
Sweet love, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me on. Sweet love, sweet chariot.
That's a jazzy version, Guy. The reason, of course, why that is playing is we are talking Rugby World Cup, and who better to discuss it with than a Rugby World Cup winner, Steve Thompson, who was, of course, an integral part of that 2003 England squad. Steve, it's 2 wins from 2 for England in the tournament so far. Are we amongst the favourites for you?
We are. You know, everyone keeps saying it. I think it's true. It is one of the most open World Cups that we've had. You know, Wales there. You know, Australia losing at the weekend. I still think they'll come back strong. South Africa lost to New Zealand in the first round, but they were my favourite, South Africa, going into it. And it's, you know, mentally, can they come back from a defeat to reach the final? Because I think, you know, they've got a squad that's good enough. And I think England have got a chance, you know, as long as we stick away from some injuries to Vunipola, perhaps, and also our discipline.
Interesting that mention. Just we'll move on to Wales, Australia, and the consequences for England as well. But you mentioned there the South Africa defeat to New Zealand. An amazing stat that no team has ever won the Rugby World Cup having lost a game in the pool stage. And you were talking to us off there about what you thought was the importance of beating South Africa in the pool stage in 2003. You just talked to us a little bit more about that, why you thought it was such an important game, and then how important it went on to be for you guys as you went through the tournament.
Well, one of it, you always know you got a slightly easier run-in you should do. So you look at it that way. But then, you know, mentally as well, you know, if you can just keep that winning mentality going through the squad, you know, and like I said, we honestly thought that year we were going to play South Africa again in the final because we thought they were that good a team. But speaking to some of the players afterwards, away from the World Cup and that, they said mentally it just broke them. You know, they lost the game and that was them gone. So
do you think had England lost that game, sorry to interrupt, but do you think that you guys would have been strong enough to regroup in a way that they weren't? Or do you think any team, you know, that's fancied like that goes in with such a sort of hardened view of themselves, almost so much self-confidence and belief in what they can do, that if you then get beaten, it does sap a lot of that away from you?
You know, I'd hope to think that we had the squad and the experience to actually come back from it. You know, so I think, you know, perhaps we could have come, but we'd have had a harder, well, not harder. To win a World Cup, you've got to beat all the best teams in it. So, you know, and we'd done that just before that as well. We'd gone away to New Zealand and Australia. and won that. And in the autumn internationals, we beat them at home as well. So it wasn't about that. We had the belief that we could win, but it does help just keeping that winning mentality, like I said earlier. But I thought, with the experience and the older heads that we had, perhaps if we had lost that game, we still would have been able to win the World Cup.
Bounce back from it. It's an amazing record that no team's ever lost a game in the group stage and gone on to win the tournament. It seems so incredible where you can lose possibly it's difficult to lose 2 and still progress, but you can certainly lose 1 game, obviously, and make it through. The line today in a lot of the papers is about Billy Vunipola, an interview he's given, where he's talked about the way that the team have unloaded a lot of the emotional baggage on each other of 4 years ago, of any issues they've got with each other, almost on a personal level. We saw Henry Slade and Elliot Daly having a bit of a set to in the first game when I think it was Daly just overran a pass from Henry Slade and it cost us a potential try against Tonga. Apparently that's all been resolved. They get over the little difficulties on the pitch a bit more now. Is it important to have that relationship with each other where you can be really honest? And Billy talks about how in 2015 they just didn't know each other that well, he said, and I thought, I'm a bit surprised if that is a big factor in how you're playing on the pitch, whether or not you know each other that well off the pitch. Do you know what I mean? Because you can know someone really well and not like them, and would that make you more likely to play hard for them, if you know what I mean?
I think that's rubbish. That when they were winning Six Nations and under the coaches of Farrell and that, who were great coaches, I thought the players just bottled it really. When you look at it, they turned around and Marla's turned around and said, the pressure of a home World Cup, whereas all the other countries that really had a home World Cup have won it.
Done well.
Yeah. So it's like, obviously the players just weren't good enough.
To them. Yeah.
It
wasn't helped by the management, was it? Stuff like, and Sam Burgess is maybe unfairly scapegoated sometimes, but the whole issue with him coming into the team so late and playing essentially the first games at centre, international games at centre, we're in a World Cup, all that sort of thing. It didn't help the players either, did it?
It didn't help it in that, but he's a good lad, Sam, and he fitted into the squad really well. And I thought the coaching staff they had there were very good. Farrell's now that's gone on, and done really well. Roundtree. You see that they had the coaches there and they had the winning mentality there as well. The players, I was there in 2011 as well, which was a bit of a nightmare. The wheels sort of fell off a bit there, and then to go in there, I just thought the players at the time perhaps didn't handle the pressure of being at home where they should have. The better teams really backed themselves, especially being at home, whereas they didn't. So for them to turn around and say, we didn't really know each other, and that, I think that's a bit of a cop out. I think sometimes people go into media sessions and feel like they've just got to say something for the sake of saying it. Where I think this squad now is they've certainly got the weapons to actually go out there and win it. But mentally, are they able to really step up? In the Six Nations, the stat was at half time, I know the game's 80 minutes, but after 40 minutes they were Grand Slam champions. Suddenly they had the worst Six Nations they've had for years, and I think that's a mentality of not being able to finish games off and having that real belief in that in the team to go out there and win the games and get it over the line.
Does this squad have a Johnny Wilkinson? By that I don't mean a kind of world-class fly half. I mean someone who can win a game out of nothing. When the chips are really down, just go, we're winning this.
They've got Farrell there, who has got that absolute belief to win games. For me, a lot of people talk about Johnny Wilkinson. It's quite funny because, don't get me wrong, he was amazing for me. But I see him as a Formula One car, an outstanding Formula One car. You need a good driver, and some people don't understand it when I say this. For me, he had Will Greenwood outside him, who was a phenomenal brain. When it came to it, really drove the team well. And when you look at the game of rugby, sometimes when you're at fly half, you don't actually see the whole picture. Whereas when you're at outside centre, you've got that bit more time to actually read the game and call the calls. And Will Greenwood used to call the calls a lot of the time. In 2007, England were terrible. They got hammered against South Africa. Yeah. Everything fell apart. Mike Catt overthrew the coach, Ashton, by the sounds of it. Started picking himself. Johnny Wilkinson wasn't playing well. Suddenly, Mike Catt's outside him, driving him.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he's world class again. So I'm not just saying, Johnny Wilkinson is an icon and that, but also you need brains outside as well to actually drive that car.
And the way Johnny asked it, and I'm not saying that I wouldn't have asked it the same way, but it shows to an outsider you don't appreciate that. But if you've been there, you see, I often read the number 12 position in particular is described like the eyes and the ears of the fly half, and you have to be able to have that partnership there. That's maybe why Farrell and Ford does make a good partnership, a better one maybe than Farrell and Tuolangi would at 10-12. That's up for debate as well. I wanted to get your thoughts, Steve, on the front row issue, obviously an area of expertise for you, because reading reading today that Mako Vunipola should be fit for the Argentina game. Would you throw him straight back in? Of course, he's only played, I think, 17 minutes of rugby since the Champions Cup final back in May, which is a little bit alarming, but we know how good he can be at his best. Is he worth chucking straight back in if he's fit and ready to go?
I think they've got to, or you can't put him in at all. They might as well have sent him home. So they've got to chuck him in. When you look at it, you got Genge there, who can come on as replacement, and make Marler as well. Marler doesn't really do that much around the park and that compared to Genge. But then suddenly, if Mako can come through it, you've got Genge coming off the bench. You've got two outstanding world-class loose heads there.
Have we forgotten almost how good Mako can be? I mean, it isn't that long since that game against Ireland where he was man of the match and absolutely incredible. But it is a lot of water's gone under the bridge since then, and there have been other players who have had standout performances. He is, at his best, arguably the best loose head in the world, isn't he? And is he key if England are going to go on and win this, or have we got with Marler and Genge good alternatives that if Mako were to get injured again, for example, if the worst happened, we could cope without it?
I think we could cope without it.
Okay.
I think if his brother got injured, that's when we'd worry as well. Mako, like you said, I actually quite liked Mako until Genge's really put his hand up and he's really stepped up in these games. Before that, I quite liked Mako coming off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
There's no point having Marler on the bench. He can't do what Genge or Mako can do. So when Mako starts, sometimes he does tire in real tight, hard games. He tires, so you lose that impact from him. So whereas if you can have Marler to start, if you're doing that, Marler to start, get you 20, 30 minutes. In the warm-up game against Italy, they'd done it. They brought
Literally
Genge and Sinclair.
30 minutes or so.
Yeah, Cole and that came on. They'd done 30 minutes, then they came on, smashed it for 10 minutes, half-time, smashed it for the second half. When you actually look at it, that's quite a good technical sort of thing. Jones and that, I do slate him sometimes, and that, but for me, that was actually quite an instrumental way of turning the game. It was a bit of a nothing game, and suddenly Sinclair and Genge came on and just changed the game, and it happened as well in the last game against America. Genge came on, Sinclair came on, and the whole pace of the whole game, which you don't normally get from props, and that's where we're blessed with it a little bit. If you've got Genge, Sinclair and Mako, you've got players there that can be game changers. Cole and Marler are slow sort of type game players, and they sort of come into the end of it a bit. The new age props. But people say that we had Trevor Woodman and Phil Vickery, who were massive ball carriers, and also loose, really good around the loose as well. So you look like Genge, to me, is just superb. He could be one of the finds of the World Cup, and if we can keep him fit, I'd rather him be fit at the moment than Marler or Cole.
Spot on. We've just had a text into the show from Angus listening in Oxford, who says, having got to know Mo Farah 6 years ago, I would be absolutely shocked if he had anything to do with these Salazar accusations. Well, there's nothing flying his way as yet.
This is Love Sport.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it, sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
Are you paying way over the odds for your car insurance? The spiralling costs put people off driving, full stop. But you're a careful driver, and realistically, you'll only need an insurance payout if some halfwit cuts you off on the M1. So you shouldn't be forced to pay massive car insurance premiums. And you don't have to. Go to price comparison site aspokesmansaid.com today and find out the best value car insurance deals on the market. Don't pay the price for not shopping around.
Spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
I love my brother. We do fun things like playing together. I like having hugs with Freddie. Freddie gives the best hugs. Freddie used to be very poorly, and the doctor said he might need a new liver. Then one day, a very nice person gave their liver to Freddie. It was amazing. We were so happy. Now he's around to give me more hugs than ever.
Tell your family you want to save lives. To find out more, visit organdonation.nhs.uk.
Lots to come on Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. We're continuing our investigation into the Alberto Salazar situation. We're going to be joined by Tim Crow, who's a sports marketing and sponsorship expert, to find out about the commercial aspect of this. Let's not forget, this was the Nike Oregon Training Center. What impact is this ban going to have on the sports giant? They've recovered from scandal before, but this is on a massive scale. All that and more, but first, the news.
On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is Love Sport News.
From the Sky News Centre at 6. The Prime Minister's refused to deny outright that he had an affair with a businesswoman being investigated for receiving public funds. When Boris Johnson was London Mayor, Jennifer Akuri was given £126,000 of taxpayers' cash and joined him on overseas trade missions. He denies any wrongdoing but wouldn't clarify their relationship to our political editor Beth Rigby.
The issue about whether you misuse public money, that's why I'm
Well, I
asking
can
whether you were
certainly
having
say
a
there was
sexual relationship
absolutely
with her.
there was no question of that at all. I think it's curious that the current Mayor of London is devoting quite so much time to pumping this stuff out.
It's been confirmed the UK will have a points-based immigration system after Brexit. Home Secretary Priti Patel's also announced that 60% of police officers will be allowed to have tasers. Heavy downpours have brought flash flooding across the UK and trapped people in their homes on the Isle of Man. Thunderstorms swept across the country, with some areas hit by a week's rain in just an hour. Figures show annual house price growth nearly ground to a halt last month, remaining below 1% for the 10th month running. The average home in the UK now stands at just over £215,000. In sport, Manchester City midfielder Rodri insists injury problems are uniting the squad and making them stronger. They'll have to do without Kevin De Bruyne, Aymeric Laporte and John Stones for tonight's Champions League match against Dinamo Zagreb.
It's a tough moment for the team because we lose some good players and important players for the team, but this only makes us be stronger for the next months. We have to be all together, and we know the situation, but it's not an excuse. We can give up in our challenge this year.
Tottenham face a huge test when they host European giants Bayern Munich. And Matt Damon's revealed turning down the lead role in Avatar cost him just over £200 million. He says James Cameron offered him 10% of the profits if he played the part of Jake Sully. That's the latest. I'm Tanya Snuggs.
Love Sport Radio. On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive.
Good evening, it's the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. Johnny Burrow and Guy Watts, joined by special guest and Rugby World Cup winner Steve Thompson until 7. Our top story this evening is, of course, the news that Salazar, the former coach of Sir Mo Farah, has been banned for 4 years for doping offences. No allegations as yet levelled at Mo, who has, of course, never failed a drugs test, maintains he's always done things by the book, but it's not a good look for him. And when we're talking about the broader ramifications of this judgment, it's hard to look beyond, I should say, Nike, because the centre that Salazar was operating out of was called the Nike Oregon Project. Nike literally there in the name. Now, they are, of course, a huge brand, a global giant, and they have recovered from controversy before. But, Steve, this is bad.
It is bad, but like Nike always seems, or Nike, as you say, always seems to come out the other side of it. Look at all the controversy and the athletes they've had in the past, and they're a brand that's just huge, that's just an absolute monster, and it's not good for Mo. But if he's absolutely innocent, and it will come through, because the truth does get found out in the end. Look at Lance Armstrong. We keep saying that. For me, that was a fantastic watch when I watched the documentary of it, with his comeback and everything, and then suddenly it all got unearthed about what he's been up to, and also the other one, the Icarus, about the Russians and Sochi. So the truth does come out at the end, but I just hope for a hero, a British hero, Sir Mo, actually he is innocent. He says he's innocent, and we can, just look at it, keep him as a hero, and just say, there's just a bad egg, and he's been pushed out now.
I certainly hope so. We're joined on the line by Tim Crow, who is a sports marketing and sponsorship expert. Good evening, Tim. Thanks for joining us. Obviously, Salazar linked almost inextricably to Nike. The Nike Oregon project was where all of this was going on. What impact is this ban going to have on the sportswear provider? They've recovered from scandal before, but this is named after them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, athletics is a very, very small part of Nike's business, but it's a very, very big part of their brand, particularly in the States. So, as you would expect, because Salazar is appealing, they are standing by him. But because they are so inextricably linked with the project in terms of its name, there will be a loss of damage limitation PR going on right now.
Are they not trying to get their name taken off it as quickly as possible?
Well, I think that would only arise if once the appeal is heard and is not upheld. But right now, they appear to be standing by him, and certainly it's well known there's a close relationship between Salazar and senior Nike people. So for the moment, at least, they're standing by him, but obviously all bets are off if that appeal is unsuccessful.
Is this going to have genuine ramifications for the standard man on the straight? Do they look at this judgment and go, oh no, that's named after Nike, I'd better buy my trainers from Adidas? Or do they actually go, I don't care, all of these multinationals are up to something or other, this is just the way the world works?
That's a fairly cynical view. I don't think the man on the street would even have heard of the Nike Oregon project. I mean, I think, one of the key facts here is that Nike happens to have, if you are a long-distance runner, a marathon runner, you are buying Nike Vaporflies because they are quite clearly, I've just seen some stats in the last couple of days, that they're boosting people's performance by 4 to 5% as long-distance runners. So I think, if you're a distance runner, I don't think you're going to stop getting yourself Vaporflies. If you're the man on the street, I don't think you will have heard of the Nike Oregon project. The first they'll have heard of it is when they read about it in today's papers or tomorrow's papers.
So they're going to get away with it then, Tim?
Well, the question of whether they're getting away with anything, it's more, what's happening with Salazar. He's appealed. We will see. I mean, quite clearly, it's become a big story very quickly. So, as I say, at the moment for Nike, it's a damage limitation exercise, but they're standing by him. So until we know what happens with the appeal, we won't know what happens in terms of Nike's fate. But the fact is, Nike has come through many, many issues. It's had many successes. And it's a huge, huge company that goes from strength to strength. I mean, they've announced their most recent set of results last week, and they were so good that the share price went to another record high. So although this is certainly a big story, whatever happens, I don't think it's going to affect Nike that much in the long term.
Not at all. If anything, it might boost them, mightn't it? Really, when you actually, it sounds weird, but like I said, they're out there in the public eye again. They imagine how much money they've had to pay to get all this footage on papers, on news, on everything like that. Once again, you're gonna hear the word Salazar, that's the guilty culprit, but still Nike's Nike. Suddenly, like you said, we
just talked about their shoes.
Yeah, they must be so happy, really, in a way that they're not even having to pay for this. As much as you say.
But I feel like I run in a pair of Nikes right now. A wise man once said, "There's no such thing as bad publicity," right?
Yeah, absolutely. But for some people who perhaps aren't as bulletproof as a multinational, could there be such a thing as bad publicity? Mo Farah not facing any allegations, never been found guilty of failing a drugs test, but equally it doesn't look good when your main period of success came when you were working under a coach who's been found guilty of doping offences. Is he going to, commercially speaking, suffer any collateral damage through association here?
Well, this is the tragedy of athletics, unfortunately. I mean, doping has been a sort of spectre stalking athletics now since Ben Johnson and that famous 100 metres failed test in Seoul in '88. So unfortunately, when anybody does anything remarkable in track and field, we all now think, I wonder. That's the tragedy of it, because, you know, there are a huge number of clean athletes. Unfortunately, there are also a hell of a lot of athletes who aren't clean, and they come like waves. I mean, every single major event now, there is a presentation of a new set of medals going back. I mean, they've just had it out in Doha of representations going back to sort of 2009, 2011. 2012 Olympics was absolutely ruined by the fact that there were so many failed tests. So, you know, it's not just Mo, it's everybody involved in athletics, and it's a war that they can't seem to win.
In terms of their commercial viability, how are athletes who are either found guilty of failing drugs tests with the likes of Justin Gatlin, or have allegations without any concrete proof, such as Christian Coleman, how is their commercial viability affected?
There's always, there is always a problem when it comes to somebody like Coleman, although USADA had to climb down from what they'd done because they hadn't followed their own rules. But as soon as you get into the business of being known for missing tests or whatever it is, sponsors are very risk averse, so your chances of finding new sponsors diminish very quickly.
And Tim, overall, how badly is athletics struggling as a sport at the moment? We've got this saga when we should be celebrating the likes of Dina Asher-Smith, and we've got largely empty stadiums at the World Championships. It's not been a good week.
Yeah, athletics has been struggling for a long time. Commercially, it's very fragile. And in places where it should be much bigger, it's actually going backwards. Really, the only thing that gives athletics, I'm not going to say a shot in the arm because that wouldn't be the right thing to say, would it? But the Olympics is really keeping athletics going. Every 4 years, it gets that spot in that shot in the spotlight, but it's a very fragile sport, and it doesn't seem to be able to get itself out of this cycle of being stalked by doping, or to find ways of engaging new audiences and get itself onto the back pages for the right reasons on a regular basis. And it's a sport that is really struggling right now. Put it this way, I haven't had a client say to me for years, let's look at athletics.
Tim, fascinating to speak to you. Thank you for your time. Tim Crow there, who's a sports marketing and sponsorship expert. While we were all getting very excited about the athletics, about this incredible ruling with reference to Salazar and what that could mean potentially for Sir Mo Farah, there was a goal in the Champions League, and Steve Thompson, MBE, who was it for?
Oh, Club Brugge, I love it. I was there. I was literally jumping up as well. I just caught it in the corner of my eye. So, a massive fan of Zidane, but there's nothing better than seeing one of them teams just crash and burn, isn't it?
I think I actually are spot on with that. I don't think you find many people who don't like Zidane. I think people loved him as a footballer, and I think he's gone about his time as a manager with great dignity. But Real Madrid are a team everyone loves to hate, and if you're going to associate yourself so closely with that team, then you're not going to be immune to people saying, "Oh, I'm taking a little bit of enjoyment in that." And if they were to lose to Club Brugge, yeah.
I love Zinedine Zidane, but I'm taking great pleasure in his downfall.
Also, Eden Hazard, he hasn't scored yet, has he? I mean, having spent like 4 years flirting with Real Madrid so openly, it was insulting to Chelsea, and I was almost defending on their behalf, even though I hate Chelsea. He's gone there for 130 million quid. He's apparently put on a load of weight in the summer, and I'm not convinced he's shed all of it either, and he's still not scored. It's like, mate, you're 130 million quid, you've got to pull your finger out.
You see it as well, don't you? Zinedine, you always say, never go back. You never
Yeah,
go
yeah.
back. When you've had a good thing, never go back to it because
Very
it's
true.
never as good the second time.
It would never going to be as good. 3 Champions Leagues in a row. What do you think? He walked away, and
can't
then
win.
8 months later he was back. What do you think was different?
Cannot win. But from that Hazard to Real Madrid angle, do we think there's a psychological element there where the reason why he name dropped them for years is because that was his dream, and maybe for him he had that embedded in his mind as the end goal. So having got to Real Madrid, it's not that this is an opportunity to score goals, to kick on, to win things. It's the final destination. He's completed it. I mean, for you, Steve, when you won the World Cup in 2003, there must have been a feeling that, well, how can it get better than this? How do you handle that as a player?
There's a big lull. I must admit, there was a big lull for us. For me, especially coming back after that. You know, probably never got over it really as such because, you know, we've talked about it before. You know, you hit a massive high and then suddenly the way British sports set up, they just hammer you. So you come back on the Tuesday, train Wednesday, play Saturday. So we never really got into a flow of actually enjoying it and thinking, you know, we've done well here. And a pat on the back, you know, it was just right straight back into it. But, you know, Hazard, if it was a dream move, you would have thought he'd have had that excitement, turned up in the best shape he's ever been and just gone, but he didn't, you know. I think some of the camera angles and the shirt wasn't great.
It adds £10.
He did look quite big on it, but, you know, I'm not quite sure. But you'd still expect him to turn up with no question marks and just go, this is like my dream move. I am going to do the best I can to be here.
It's a cliche you hear. I say it's a cliche. Maybe it is true. This is what I want to ask you because it's people who, talking about me and Johnny, who haven't been at that top level in a sport, and you hear a lot of people saying it's one thing, you know, when you get your first, say, international call up or you get your big move to a big club, whatever it might be, and people say it's not about getting to that level, it's about staying there. And did you find that, you know, when you went, you know, fairly quickly, like through the ranks, if you like, Northampton playing the back row, then the front row, and then pretty quickly playing for England after that, and then shortly after a World Cup and all that, you know, was it a case of, you know, ever a case of, right, I've made it almost, you get an England call up and think, oh, brilliant, you know, rub your hands, sort of job done, and or was there a concerted effort to be like, right, now I need to actually kick on, now I need to double down and work even harder, or did it come quite naturally?
No, it's you know, it sounds well. I found international rugby quite easier to play than club rugby at times, to be honest.
Why?
I don't know. I just did. But don't get me wrong, I was absolutely petrified every time I played, especially before I got injured. I certainly was. The second my comeback as such after my injury, I sort of enjoyed it even more.
Did it feel like a free hit?
Yeah, exactly, because it was something that weren't supposed to have been given to me, and then also how quickly I was forgotten after the first one. You think to yourself, oh, that was quite easy, you know, this, you know, and if I do make up some real bad mess ups, I'm forgotten quickly anyway, so it's fine, you know, that's why you look at it. But, you know, there was little targets that you always have, you know, you never want to be an OCW, a one cap wonder. That's the one thing you never.
I'd take it. If you said now, Johnny, do you want one England cap?
That's
yes,
what it say.
please.
That's what, you know. Never be an OCW. But then also, your first year at international rugby is your easiest because no one really knows you. No one really cares about you. It's the second year also that you define yourself as an international player. That's how we used to talk about it. You know, the first year you come in, no one really looks at you. No one. The second year, if you bedded in and you're there to stay, really. If you years 2 and 3, you're there. First year's, you know, you've earned it, you've got there, but you haven't really made it on the international stage because there's so many great players at club level that all of a sudden they just can't seem to be able to step up.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, there's some average club players and they put on an England shirt and they're just
You said that's what Will Greenwood was like. Yeah.
Well, yeah, he was a class act. Don't get me wrong. In big club games, he could just switch it on when he wanted to,
but not week in, week out necessarily.
He's just sometimes don't think he wanted to. He's just there, and suddenly he was that good. I think at times that he could just go, I'm going to play today.
And in terms of that one or first season syndrome, if you like, at international level, I remember Neha Milner-Skudder, the New Zealand winger at the last World Cup, who no one really heard of, and I haven't heard much of him since, but Eddie Jones remembered that specifically and said that's what I want Joe Cokanasiga to be for England at this World Cup. So we've barely seen any of him. All we know is that he's exciting and dangerous, and if we don't know much, then the other teams will know even less, right? And it's an exciting prospect, and he might in a couple of years' time be a lot easier to play against because we've seen so much and we know what he's going to do, but every time he comes on the pitch, I guess McConaughey as well, you're a bit like,
I'm going to show my age here as well. Italia 90, Toto Scolacci.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I was about to say exactly that. I had never heard of him, and he is the one who my dad talks about whenever we play football.
All right, thanks for that.
No,
So
Steve, come on.
Look how old he's trying to say I am. You know, yeah, my dad, you know.
My dad is much older than you, Steve. But if he gets in on goal, first thing he'll do is miss. But second is shout Schillaci. And if you look at his record, he scored 7 in 16 for Italy, and 6 of them came at the 1990 World Cup out of absolutely nowhere.
He just
loves sport.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. This means that travelling to the EU will change. You'll need to check online if your passport is valid for travel to Europe. If you're planning on driving, you'll need to check if you have the right documents to drive. And make sure your travel insurance covers all your healthcare needs. To keep your trip on track, check what you need to do at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
Don't get caught out in the great energy price hike as large firms look to charge you more. If you want to save money on your energy bills, it's not too late to see what's on the market. With rising gas and electricity bills, don't get caught out wasting your money on expensive tariffs. A Spokesman Said will show you the very best value deals available. Check out aspokesmansaid.com and you could be using your savings to put towards a well-earned holiday.
With aspokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit wedooh.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
If you're driving on a motorway and you see a red X sign overhead, you need to change lanes safely. Driving in a red X lane is an offence. Red X's are there for a reason, to protect you and others from danger. The lane may be blocked by a broken down vehicle or road workers, or the lane may be needed for the emergency services. So if you see a red X, change lanes safely. Highways England, connecting the country.
One thing I've learned is never judge a book by its movie. I'm joking, I never read.
This is Love Sport.
It is just majestic as theme tunes go. We've got a magnificent evening of Champions League football for you tonight, which is already underway. No big shocks so far. Atalanta 0, Shakhtar Donetsk 0. Oh yeah, and Real Madrid 0, Club Bruges 1. We'll be keeping you updated throughout that game. Dennis Bonaventure giving Bruges the lead. And make no mistake, if Zinedine Zidane loses this one, he is under serious pressure. But we've got English clubs in action as well. Tottenham Hotspur host Bayern Munich. Pochettino very, very quick to talk up their German opponents tonight. I suspect to cover his own back if they get battered. Steve, this is a really tough one for Spurs.
It is, at the moment. But on the other end, you could look at it because no one's expecting it. Everyone's expecting them to go out there and get hammered. And, you look at periods and seasons, and I know it's quite early doors, this could be a defining moment for them to go, we've had all the pressure on, all the talk's a bit rubbish, we haven't had the best of starts, but suddenly we turn up against Bayern Munich and we put a result in. Obviously they're going to want, they won at the weekend, they're going to want, a comeback after their last European game. They need a result, and for them to be able to turn around to the supporters, to all the papers, to the media, to people like us that are actually kicking them while they're down a little bit, this could be the perfect time, and we'll really see what the players think of the coach tonight. I think, do they still respect him? Do they still want to play for the club?
There's been a lot of talk about both teams' strikers in the lead up to this fixture, with the Bayern Munich manager suggesting that Lewandowski and Harry Kane are the two best strikers in the world at the moment. Kane's looked quite handy this season. We know what he's capable of. Lewandowski has looked on another level. He's got 10 goals already in the Bundesliga, 51 minutes per goal. For you, where do those two rank in the kind of world hierarchy, not of players, but of outright number nines?
I think, Kane's quality, wherever he goes, he scores goals. Can we really count the Bundesliga as a league? It's a little bit like the Scottish league, really, isn't it? You get strikers go up there that can score goals. It's all about, as well, when you're a striker, it's all about confidence. And, obviously, he can go there in the Bundesliga, score goals, But because of the confidence, he takes that in to the European games as well. So he's playing with a great team, scoring goals like for fun at the moment. But when it really comes to those tough knockout stages, can he actually start scoring them? Because Harry Kane he does score goals.
He's just got that knack. Of course, Man City in action as well, and on paper their game is a lot more straightforward. Dinamo Zagreb at home. That should be 3 points for them in Group C, even without Kevin De Bruyne, who's been ruled out with a minor muscle injury. But Pep Guardiola has yet to win a Champions League with Manchester City. And let's be honest, this is the one that City want. This is the one that their super rich owners are after. When they came in, okay, at first it was about Robinho and it was bedding in and it was winning the Premier League. But they're not messing about now. This is the one they're after. And I think if Pep doesn't win one soon, they're not going to be very happy with him. But he insists he isn't under any pressure to win it this year.
I think in my first press conference in my first year here in Manchester, you are here to win the Champions League. And I said, okay, I spoke a few times with Khaldoon, our chairman, with Ferran. They didn't tell me that. So I will try to do my best for the next period.
By next May, it's going to be 9 years since Pep lifted that trophy last. Do we have questions over him in this competition?
Well, Johnny, let's recap those last 9 years just very quickly. He spent the first of those 9 years at Barcelona, where, of course, he didn't win a Champions League again. He'd already won 2 with them in 2009 and 2011, both of them against Manchester United in the final, so I remember them well. Jose Mourinho actually won the league with Real Madrid in that last season that Pep was in charge at Barca. He had a year's sabbatical after that. He came out of that, had 3 years in charge at Bayern Munich, where he didn't get past the semi-finals, had a couple of heavy defeats in those semi-finals as well. He then, of course, went to Manchester City, and this is now his 4th season with City. And obviously, if he were to win the Champions League again this year, he would have won it 3 times, which is as many times as any manager has won it. I'm not trying to say Pep Guardiola is a fraud, as various newspapers have branded him in the past, but I do think that there is an argument to say that he has underperformed in this competition, hasn't he? Because 2 Champions Leagues inside 3 seasons of his first 3 seasons as manager were remarkable, but even at the time, people were saying, well, could he do it without Messi, without not just Messi, but Xavi and Iniesta and the players he had in that Barca team that a lot of us probably consider the best team we've ever seen. And the point is that he hasn't actually managed to do it yet, has he? And they've been brilliantly entertaining to watch, but I don't think it's just the fact that, you can say it goes against you sometimes in tight games. It can be decided by luck. I think in the last 2 seasons at Manchester City, and both the ties that they've ended up being knocked out in, the Liverpool one 2 years ago and Spurs earlier this year, I think that there are arguments to say that Pep has got it badly wrong. He picked Gundogan ahead of Sterling in that first leg at Anfield where they lost 3-0 and really lost the tie. And then in the game against Spurs this time around, he didn't bring Kevin De Bruyne on until there were 88 minutes gone. It was like, what are you doing, Pep? What are you doing?
Is it if he doesn't want it?
It's almost like he's trying to deliberately make it harder for himself or something. That's the only reason I can come up with for why you wouldn't bring Kevin De Bruyne on when you need a goal in a crucial Champions League game.
But living in the UAE, where the owners come from, they love Paris Saint-Germain, they love Barcelona, and they love Real Madrid. It's split between those 3.
They're not interested in City?
No, City, obviously, because they own them, they're there. But they're the 3 clubs that they see. So, obviously, they're not in the Premiership. So, deep down, they're not that bothered about the Premiership. They want to go and beat Barcelona. They want to beat PSG. They want to beat, Real Madrid. So, that's the European competition. So, they want to stand there with a trophy and gone, we've beaten all of you. And he hasn't done it for them at the moment. That's the one where they can stand there and, as owners of their little, you've got to be... It's a toy train set to them, really. Football club. That's what they want, and they want that big trophy.
I remember PSG, of course, owned by Qatar, and Man City by Abu Dhabi, so they've got their own little rivalry there, haven't they? So
what a bizarre world we live in, by the way.
It is, isn't it? But it's interesting you say that, Steve, because I remember I read a book recently. It's called The Club. It's all about the history of the Premier League, and the Sheikh Mansour, who owns Manchester City now, he watched that 2008 final between Man United and Chelsea on TV. It wasn't the most brilliant game by any means, but it was dramatic, of course. There were missed penalties, and there was that rainy night in Moscow, something to do with John Terry, I think. And, of course, there was that inter-Premier League rivalry, and it made him think, I want a team from this league. But it was the Champions League final that he watched. And, Steve, I think you're quite right to say that's what they really want. You've got a weird contrast with the fans who aren't bothered by Europe because they think UEFA's out to get them, which is a load of nonsense, but they haven't had a lot of luck in the competition.
Need an excuse, don't they?
Yeah, they need an excuse. They've done well enough, I suppose, in domestically the last couple of years to let them get away with it. But I think Pep could be under a little bit of pressure in a way that isn't obvious to us sitting here, in the way that Solskjaer and Emery are under pressure if he doesn't produce, a better performance. A quarter-final in the last 2 years. I don't think it's good enough.
And when we're talking about the practicalities and realities of City trying to win this thing, we've got to talk about their strength in depth, which is something we always bring up. But actually, you look at Liverpool doing it, they don't have depth on anywhere near City's level. And something that gets talked about a lot in the Champions League is how do you balance, particularly those later fixtures when you've got 2 legs per tie, with your Premier League commitments. Pep Guardiola has got no excuse on that front. All right, fine. Raheem Sterling's a bit tired from the weekend. Play Sane if he's fit, or play Mahrez. These are not negative changes he has to make. He has got a luxury squad, and he has it as easy as any other manager in the world in this competition. For me, he's got no excuses.
I think that's quite hard, though, sometimes. I think the bigger squad you got, the harder it is. Look at all the stars he's got to keep happy. A lot of them might be touch players where they've just got to keep playing, but they're not playing consistently, and they're not playing 90 minutes. So all of a sudden you're getting players, just coming in, getting one shot, and suddenly they're just a little bit edgy. They haven't got that actual full-blown,
match sharpness.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So when the big games come, if they do get an injury, suddenly some of the players haven't played in big games.
Yeah.
They might not be there. So sometimes I think, you got to have luck with injuries, but when you got a skeleton squad that are playing together all the time, they're there, they're match fit, and sometimes you take out of the physicality in training, but and then you're just playing, you're going from match to match. When you talk to a lot of the footballers, they quite like the end of the season when they're going match to match rather than train and things like that. They just want to play games.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas when you got big stars just sitting on the bench and that getting 10, 15 minutes here, it can't be good for them as well.
Out of the two, Pep and Klopp, who would you want to play under? Whether or not you're an actual footballer, just who would you want to play under as a coach?
I think Klopp.
Why?
I just think he's brilliant.
Have you been seduced by the teeth and the smile and the haircut? I think you have.
It's not as much that I quite like it that he went out to the supporters and had a beer with them before the games when he first turned up at Liverpool.
Do you think that's genuine? Do you think he's doing that because he kind of likes the idea that people talk about him like that, or because he actually wants to go
I think it's a bit of everything. I think he is a genuine man as well. People like that in that sort of limelight would get found out pretty quickly.
True.
I think when you look at players, one of the biggest things I like is when Henderson walked off one time, and he went to shake his hand. He walked past him.
Mm-hmm.
He just walked straight up to him. What you doing? And suddenly, and shook his hand. There's none of this behind closed doors. What you see is what you get. I think Pep perhaps is a more technical coach.
Yeah.
Klopp's very much into his fitness. Living up the north, you hear about the way the players are. About Milner. Milner should have gone probably last year, but they've kept him around because he's a physical specimen. And Klopp loves him apparently, because when they turn around, when they get new players, they turn around and go, "You're training with him, and you're not playing for this first team until you're as fit as him,"
really?
Which isn't going to happen because apparently he's the fittest in the team by far. He's an absolute machine.
And you made the point earlier, he left Dortmund. Of course, he was brilliantly successful there, but look at Jose Mourinho. He gets booed when he goes back to Chelsea. It's no guarantee of fans still liking you. And what was it they did at Dortmund? They sent him a message, didn't they, when he got to the Champions, or when he won the Champions League with Liverpool? You don't see that very often, where a manager's able to retain or maintain that popularity with a former club. I guess he is a little bit different. I struggle to admit it as a United fan, but I think he does have something a bit special. Klopp.
Would you like to have him at Man U?
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the way it is. A lot of clubs will turn around about a lot of managers and say, "No, he's been there. He's been soiled. We don't want him in our place." But with him, I think most clubs will want him.
I think you're right. I think Liverpool pulled off a massive coup when 4 years ago, almost to the day. I think it is October. It was when they sacked Brendan Rodgers. And by the way, good manager he is. As he's shown with Leicester now.
I was at that game when just after he got sacked, because it was like I call it the League Cup game. Okay. Brendan Rodgers, and they lost, and the home team would. The supporters were just booing and everything. I'd never seen anything like that. I expect to go to Anfield. Hadn't been there for years, just to see this unbelievable. This is brilliant. It's going to be like a carnival atmosphere. It wasn't at all. They didn't cheer. Every time Brendan Rodgers came up, they booed him.
Really?
They wanted him out, and they knew. And they even clapped the opposition at the end of the game.
Things have changed, eh?
Things have changed. All have they? I'll tell you what, things are going to be changing at Love Sport Radio from 7 o'clock. You're going to be in the capable hands of Charlie Hawkins, leading you forward for those fan shows, and we'll be finding out what's coming up for you after the break.
Love Sport.
Think the energy price cap will save you money? think again. You could be saving a lot more on cheaper energy tariffs. Price comparison site A Spokesman Said will show you just how much money you could be saving against your current tariff. Don't throw away your hard-earned money to the energy companies. Check out aspokesmansaid.com and you could switch to cheaper bills in minutes.
Aspokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
Listen to Love Sport Radio on your smartphone today. Simply download the free Love Sport app from the App Store or Google Play. Tap the play button and you'll be able to listen to your favourite station. Anytime, anywhere. Love Sport Radio, the station giving fans a voice.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just, there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it.
Sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
Hi, I'm Dean. I work for a successful shipping company in Suffolk. Ever since I heard about people's success with aspokesmansaid.com, I knew I had to investigate for myself. Every time I need to compare car insurance, home insurance and energy bills, I always contact aspokesmansaid.com. This year alone, I saved over £260 on my car insurance and also £585 on my energy bills. I saved big through aspokesmansaid.com, and you could too.
With aspokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
My mum and dad say that I don't need lots of sugar. I'm sweet enough already. So we used the Change for Life food scanner app to find out how much sugar is in our food and drink. It's surprising how much we found. So I put my detective hat on to find the healthier choices. Woohoo! Found one, Mum! You can be food smart too. Download the free Change for Life food scanner app today.
This is Love Sport.
You're listening to the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. You're with me, Johnny Burrow and Guy Watts, and of course, special guest and World Cup winner Steve Thompson until 7. But first, Guy Watts has all your latest sporting headlines and weather.
I do, Johnny. Yeah, the top story today here on Love Sport Drive, of course, that 4-year ban from all athletics for Mo Farah's former coach, Alberto Salazar. He has been given a 4-year ban for doping violations. Mo Farah says he has no tolerance for anyone who breaks the rules following this 4-year ban. The British Olympic champion attended the Americans coaching camp, the Nike Oregon Project, from 2011 until 2017. Salazar, whose accreditation for the World Championships in Doha, where of course he's coaching several athletes, has been deactivated. He says he's shocked by the verdict and intends to appeal. Farah has never failed a drugs test, of course, and has always denied any wrongdoing. Manchester City will be without Kevin De Bruyne for tonight's Champions League group game against Dinamo Zagreb. He's been ruled out with a groin injury. Spurs boss Mauricio Pochettino says his side are up against one of the great European clubs when they face Bayern Munich later. They're in North London. That's Bayern Munich after an 8-match unbeaten run at the start of the new season. And Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp says it's unlikely they'll risk the fitness of Alisson before the international break. The keeper's been out since the first game of the season against Norwich. And in the early Champions League kickoffs today, Real Madrid are 1-0 down to Club Brugge and Atalanta are 1-0 up against Shakhtar. That game is in Manchester City's group. Of course, both those games coming up to half-time. We'll have team news for you for Spurs and Man City in just a few minutes. And quickly, in your weather tonight, a chilly one, I'm afraid. 7 degrees or so overnight tonight. And tomorrow, a bit of a brighter day, but highs only of 14 degrees or so. This is Love Sport Drive.
Well, I would say thanks, Guy, but 7 degrees.
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to be wearing a jumper. Absolutely farcical. For now, in better news, we are joined in the studio by the wonderful Charlie Hawkins, who'll be carrying you forward from 7 o'clock with the Love Sport fan shows. Charlie, what you got coming up?
First up, it is the West Ham show. And last week, it was a very, very happy West Ham studio, as Steve is laughing. They beat Man United. They do have Man United's number, don't they? Especially in London. Well, they said the big test was how they would continue after those games. Would they hold on to that momentum? The answer was no, because they lost to the mighty Oxford 4-0 in the Cup. And they said they really wanted to challenge in the Cups this year. It was a priority. And does this blame, Johnny, I ask you, does this fall under Pellegrini? Because they put out not their best side, but a side that should be beating Oxford, and 4-0 is a very bad result.
Well, Pellegrini blamed himself, didn't he, Steve? He said, listen, blame me before you blame a player.
I always look at that, because a number of times you're in squads and there'll be more like your second team backup players, and they're always the ones in the background when they're not being picked. Why don't I get the opportunity? Why am I not being picked? You give them the opportunity and it don't happen. The only thing is about that is when you look at the squads, you actually want the second teams to actually perform really well in the cups, because that really puts the pressure on the first team. Now, the first team are looking, thinking, we can't be... Oh, my gosh, yes.
The reason why Steve Thompson has just stopped mid-flow is that it is Real Madrid 0... Oh, I nearly said Bonaventura. He scored twice. It's Club Brugge 2 with, by the way, a certain Mr. Simon Mignolet keeping that clean sheet with a couple of brilliant saves. Sorry to interrupt, Steve. You were saying.
So, you always want your second team to actually perform, so to put pressure on the first team, whereas the first team are now sitting there thinking, there's no way we're going to get kicked out of this team. The pressure's not on them now, whereas you do want that competition for places.
Selection headache for the manager, not to be, but they are flying, aren't they, in the Premier League, because they're unbeaten since that opening day thrashing to Man City. A point on the weekend, was it a point game, was it 2 points dropped? But their league form, they're still unbeaten. They are there. They had chances to win on the weekend, so it was a semi bounce back of character, and they showed that little bit of test of strength to come back from that 4-0 defeat to Oxford. But West Ham, it feels one step forward, two steps back.
It's that inconsistency, Charlie. It was so very West Ham to go and beat United and then lose 4-0 to Oxford. I don't think I have ever seen anything more West Ham. From 8, you got the Crystal Palace fan show. Now, there have been rumblings of discontent about a certain Mr. Roy Hodgson from the Palace fan base generally, and certainly from the guys at the Back of the Nest pod. But another win at the weekend, 2-0 against Norwich, climbing up that table. Surely the naysayers are being silenced now.
I don't think they will ever go away. If it's not Roy, it's another thing. They said, what worries us is our home form. We used to be so good at Selhurst Park. Now they've got 7 points out of 9 at Selhurst Park. They're doing really well. I'm sure they'll next be worrying why they're not scoring 3 goals. They're just getting 2.
Why
their
the
away
taps
form
don't
is a
run
problem.
with cranberry juice.
Well, this is it. It's all #Roy out. I think as the kids say it. I've got to start saying that now. People keep reminding me I'm getting closer to 30. As tears of my own come through. But yeah, Palace fans, they're not too happy at the minute, because I feel that Palace fans, if we're talking about a ladder of where's the next step, where's the next milestone, it's right, we come up to the Premier League, we want to be an established side, and then after you become that established side, which I think is fair to say Crystal Palace are, what's the next step? Do we try to break into Europe? Do we spend a little bit more investment? And I think Palace fans are caught there in a minute, because they're established, but there's not much excitement elsewhere, is there? Where do they go from here? And they feel that maybe, potentially, they might have peaked under Roy.
Do you agree with that?
No, I don't. I think Roy is if I can say it, I don't know how you feel, Steve, I think Roy is a very underrated manager, and I think that with Roy, yes, maybe you know what football you're going to get, but these are wins that are... He's an underrated manager and underrated wins. All right, Norwich aren't maybe the most feared side in the Premier League, but this is a Norwich that beat Man City only 2 weeks ago.
Watch what you say. Watch what you say. I'm a Norwich fan. Watch what you say.
He's a Norwich fan and he's won a Rugby World Cup. And he's currently a yard and a half away from it.
I've got a great first yard of pace, though, Steve.
Yeah. Who would they actually bring in? This is what I don't understand with some supporters. It's like, what do you want to do? Bring in a Hughes? Do you want to bring in a journeyman? Do you want to? There's no, I'll tell you what, Klopp, can you leave Liverpool and then come to Crystal Palace? It's not completely right. It's not going to happen. Not be happy with what it is, but they're still getting better. They're getting better and better. And something for me that they probably want a good cup run or something like that. At the moment, they're not going to be challenging for the top 4 or top 6 if you're realistic. And he's a manager there that's actually getting results for them, getting wins. So I just don't know what some supporters want.
And then from 9, it's the QPR show. Disappointment at the weekend, a 2-0 defeat to West Brom. But this is still a season where they are exceeding expectations.
Yeah, they are exceeding expectations. And the games come thick and fast. As you know, in the Championship, they play Cardiff tomorrow night and then Blackburn on the weekend. So a chance for them to put it in their rearview mirror, get back to winning ways, because it was 4 wins on the spin. They were looking to make it 5. They were up against West Brom, who are the only side yet to taste defeat in the Championship. But they were really flat. I watched it on the weekend, so I'll blame me.
Then from 10 until 10:30, it's the Leicester City fan show. Are they going to get the top 4?
I'm going to go one better. I spoke to Lee Chappie, who's coming on tonight, so prepare for this because you want to tune in. I said, Lee, you all good tonight, 10 to 10:30 to do the show? He said, yeah, brilliant. I said, you must be pleased on the weekend. I said, we'll chat to it later. He said, the way Man United and Arsenal played last night, he said, top 3 at this rate. He went top 4, almost assertive. That's what Man United and Arsenal are offering. So I'm very excited to have that chat with him later.
Well, Leicester feeling very, very confident. And then from 10:30 till 11, it's the Sheffield United fan show. What's the feeling there?
Well, the feeling is obviously disappointment because, it was an error, but this is a Liverpool side that, just winning for fun at the minute. They've clearly continued the form over from last year, but they're really pleased. The fans are behind him. They've had some great results this year, but a lot's being made of this talking point of, Henderson's error and Chris Wilder saying, I really blame him. I'm not going to put my arm around his shoulder. He's got to learn. And people sort of taking umbrage to those words because he's been quite harsh on Dean Henderson.
Tough love.
No, but it's not tough love because he said, I'm not giving him the tough love. He's almost words through the media where, he's got to do better if he wants to play for us. So it was a strong tough love, Steve.
Well, Charlie, it sounds like you've got a cracking few shows coming up. I'll be tuning in on my way home, as I always do. It's West Ham from 7, Palace from 8, QPR from 9, Leicester from 10, and Sheffield United from 10:30. Charlie,
and
great
breathe.
to speak to you. And breathe. We'll be back very shortly.
I know my IQ is fantastic. I took a test and the results came back negative.
Giving your team the coverage they deserve. Love Sport Radio.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just, there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it.
Sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage.
Henna men.
Cage.
Pants and pads.
You're
discreet. Masculine.
You're
secure absorption zone. Buy online or in shops.
You're
Henna men. Keep control.
Urine?
No.
Hi, I'm Barry. I'm a retired school bursar from Chingford. I thought I was paying too much for my energy and went onto a spokesmansaid.com and found that I could reduce my costs overall by £568 per annum, and I'm very grateful for that help.
With a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
This is Love Sport.
We're going to have the team news for you from Tottenham Hotspur versus Bayern Munich and Manchester City versus Dinamo Zagreb very, very shortly. But our top story tonight, this 4-year ban for Alberto Salazar, the former coach of Sir Mo Farah. 4-year ban for doping violations. Of course, no allegations as yet levelled at Sir Mo, but it is not a good look to have been linked to a coach from 2011 to 2017, Mo's biggest period of success, with this guy now being found to have behaved rather badly?
Well, yeah, worse than that, really, Johnny. If we're honest about it, what he's been doing to certain athletes, the way he's treated them like guinea pigs, as some of the whistleblowers have described it, I think, rather badly, probably doesn't quite sum it up, to be honest. But I know exactly what you're driving at. What I wanted to say just before the end of the show, obviously there'll be more on this tomorrow. I'm sure Love Sport Breakfast will be covering it extensively as well. But I wanted to sort of just say this in really explicit terms. The reason this is the story it is to us, to a lot of the kind of big media outlets here in the UK, not just in America where Salazar's from and has been based, it is because of the Mo Farah connection. Let's be quite honest about this. Say Patrick Mouratoglou, for example, one of the most high-profile tennis coaches, if he was done for some sort of similar behaviour, it would be one thing, but the fact is that he's Serena Williams' coach, and I'm not saying for a second there's anything implicating either of those people, there isn't. I'm just using it as a comparison to say that it's not always the perpetrator themselves, it's who they are associated with. And I think the problem is that goes with it is that Mo Farah, all the way through what has been a long-running saga, shall we say, involving his coach Alberto Salazar, has not exactly struck the right chord with it. Back in 2015, Catch Me If You Can, a BBC Panorama episode was aired, and it essentially launched the allegations. And Mo Farah gave a press conference around that time. He talked about the media dragging his name through the mud. His name wasn't being dragged through the mud. It was Alberto Salazar's. It was the fact that Mo Farah was associated with him that was causing the problem. If Mo Farah didn't like the association, what came with that association like that, he could and should, I would argue, have stopped working with him there and then. But he chose not to, right? He chose to remain working with the guy until 2017 when he became a dedicated marathon runner. And as we've already alluded to earlier in the show, it seemed a strange piece of timing given Salazar's own background in marathon running. But he did, and it turned out it was a few months after formal charges were brought against Salazar and the Nike Oregon project. It just seems like very strange timing to me. And I just want to sort of, I guess, preempt maybe more from Mo Farah, who's released a statement today, a short one. He talks about being relieved that this is over. I get that to a small degree, that it's been some sort of uncertain thing hanging over him in the same way it's been hanging over everyone else. But the words he's used, relieved and glad that it's over and that kind of thing, I think that seems quite strange. Yeah, I don't really believe the sentiment that he's coming out with, and I think the guy doesn't always get the best PR advice. If he is pure and simple worried about his legacy as an athlete and as a runner, then clearly the thing to do was to leave Alberto Salazar straight away in 2015. He could have said, thank you for all the help you've given me over 4 years or so.
But I can't take the risk.
But I just don't want to be associated with you. That, to me, would have been the safer ploy. It would have saved any of the name being dragged through the mud sort of talk that he has accused people of doing. They're not dragging his name through the mud. They're making an obvious association. It's his most high-profile client, Mo Farah, with Alberto Salazar. And I think that Mo Farah could have done himself a lot of favours. And even if now he's going to take the line of, OK, well, clearly this guy is and was bad, the point was that he remained a client of his, a high-profile one. And unfortunately, it also directly coincided with his best period of success.
But there's an interesting question there, because obviously we don't know whether Mo Farah was doing anything untoward whatsoever. And if he was working with a coach, where the coach is guilty of doping violations and the coach was causing other athletes to dope, but he really wasn't with Mo Farah, and Mo Farah was doing nothing wrong, and that same coach who was cheating with other people was helping Mo Farah achieve unprecedented success while being clean, why should Mo Farah cut those ties?
Well, I think, Johnny, you just gave reason enough. I mean, we're here with a former elite athlete. Steve, if you were working with a coach who you knew to be using, and we're not saying Mo Farah did, but if you knew them to be using illegal methods to train other athletes, other clients they were working with, would you have been comfortable working with that person? I mean, it's fine if you would have been, but I personally wouldn't.
I think it's
have.
a more complex question.
He said it's all right. It's all right. It's hard. It's hard to say. You've got to look at it. For me personally, if I was in an individual sport and it was going to get me, and it got me gold medals and, winning and great money and things like that, well, it's brought to Mo, you got to think you probably would stick with it. If you, in your own mind, thinking, I'm clean, but, I don't care what he's done over there, but when he's with me, it's clean. Would you change? When you've got that adrenaline, when you've just got that bite of success, when you're just winning and winning and winning, everything's going well for you, do you change it? Do you turn around and go, actually, in the back of your mind, let's be honest, top sports people are selfish.
Yeah.
You've got to be selfish.
You need that drive.
Especially when what he does, when you go out there and run 10,000 metres, all the training, everything that goes into that, where you put your body, are you going to be worried about something that you can't really control because you're winning, you're clean? Are you going to turn around and say, well, no, it's, I'm not going to work with him anymore? When you're that selfish that you just want those gold medals and you want the cash in the bank.
When you put it like that, it is a reasonably compelling argument. I do completely get it. I just think, I almost, when you put it like, you almost feel sorry for Mo Farah because you know that whether, as you yourself are going to always bring it up or the fact that someone else will always bring it up, when you talk about Mo Farah in the future, someone will go, but his coach, the one who didn't just work with him for 6 months or a year or whatever it might be, worked with him for 6 years, during which time he won 10 consecutive, major championship gold medals in his favoured events. He was done for being a cheat. He was done for doping violations, banned for 4 years. Just one short of life, really.
Another one, physios in sport, contact sports. I was speaking to one, we used to say years ago, and he used to turn around knowing that he's putting players out unfit. Not totally unfit, but in rugby, you're never going to be fit.
No.
Once the season starts, you've got knocks, you've got bangs. Yeah. You got, ethically, he should turn around and say, you're not playing. Mm-hmm. Really, they should. But they don't. The player wants to play. Does that make him a bad? No, it's not. But look at all these problems now with people being injured, people doing like, when it's their job, should I turn around and say, well, actually, I'm not playing because you're letting him play when he's injured? I'm not saying that don't get me wrong. There's drugs, there's wrong and right, but he's not. He's doing his job differently with someone else, but he's looking after him normally. Do you see what the argument I'm trying to put over?
I do see that.
It's
Steve.
Wherever you go, the top in sport, there's always going to be these little 1%ers where someone's trying to try something a little different. If Mo can look in the mirror and go, I'm totally clean. I've won all this amazing. I've made this money. Does he really care what the coach has done?
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Maybe he won't. Because ultimately it was a self-driven thing to get the medal collection he's got. He's still trying to win marathons and all that kind of thing, and he may yet have more success. Maybe his conscience is completely clear. Steve Cram, I see the BBC's chief commentator, he said today, stressed he's done nothing wrong. Well, as far as we know, he hasn't. But Steve Cram also, quite unhelpfully, back in 2015, joined the whole, if you like, the people that were anti the investigation towards Alberto Salazar, said it was a witch hunt. Well, it wasn't a witch hunt, Steve, because he was guilty of these things. People inside athletics knew, and I suspect Steve Cram knew more than he was letting on. So it was really unhelpful to say those things. Some people obviously are desperate to maintain the image of Mo Farah being, if you like, completely innocent, which as far as we know he is, but untouchable and unblemished by any of this. But as far as I see it, I don't see that he can remain completely unblemished given the seriousness of the allegations and the charges that have been brought against him today.
I think you're absolutely right. That has, of course, been our top story for today's show. I'm sure it will run in the weeks, months, years possibly coming. We'll be here every step of the way. And in terms of tonight's Champions League action, we've got some team news for you from Tottenham Hotspur. Mauricio Pochettino is not messing around against Bayern Munich. He's named a very strong team. Lloris captains the side from net. A back four of Aurier, Alderweireld, Vertonghen and Rose. A midfield three of Winks, Ndombele and Sissoko, with a front three of Dele, Son and Kane. That's pretty good. No Eriksen, but
strong otherwise.
Strong side.
Very much so. Have we got Man City team news yet?
We actually haven't got Man City team news trickling in.
You imagine whichever 11 players on Man City's roster they put out will probably beat Dinamo Zagreb, don't you?
If Pep Guardiola doesn't beat Dinamo Zagreb with the squad that he's got, I would beat Dinamo Zagreb with that squad, even without Kevin De Bruyne. I'm fully confident.
Pep Guardiola's a fraud.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
I'm saying it.
But I think they've posted team news incoming with a GIF, which is a sequence of players, and it even features some of their reserves, the likes of João Cancelo, and you just think, you spent 60 million on a backup right back.
It's not a bad position to be in. Real Madrid 2-0 down as well to Club Brugge at half-time. Don't forget that. That'll be a story tomorrow.
We've celebrated that already.
We have. We will be celebrating it long into the night if it stays like this. And we'll be talking all things Zinedine throughout the show tomorrow on Posh Boys on Drive. Steve, it's been a pleasure to spend 4 hours in your company. Lovely to have you here. Stay with us on Love Sport for the fan shows from 7 and join us again from 3 o'clock tomorrow for the Posh Boys on Drive.
Love Sport.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. This means that travelling to the EU will change. You'll need to check online if your passport is valid for travel to Europe. If you're planning on driving, you'll need to check if you have the right documents to drive. and make sure your travel insurance covers all your healthcare needs. To keep your trip on track, check what you need to do at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
Don't get caught out by rising energy bills this year. Leading